Hello, this is the sixth and finale part for now of An Untraveled Road by Neon Zangetsu. Link will be in the description. All author's notes have been removed between chapters. Also, any explicit NSFW scene will be removed. This part will cover chapter 37 to 41. Chapter 37. You've changed things. There's no going back. See, to them, you're just a freak. Like me, Tilda. Tilda? There's no going back stone groaned like a dying beast. A brittle crack echoed, not sharp like a twig snapping, but long and aching like the slow tear of something ancient coming undone. The ruins of the plaza shifted. Dust slithered in hesitant spirals through shafts of broken morning light. Beneath a collapsed vendor's stall, its lacquered wood now charred and twisted like warping bone, something moved. And then, rah! The debris erupted. Rubble burst upward in a violent arc, a flash of gold chakra sending timber and flagstone flying alike. Naruto rose with a snarl, bare-armed and bleeding, smoke rising off his body in thin, angry tendrils. He stood there like a blade unsheathed. His gaze pulsed with raw fury, yet it gleamed cold, distant. Not blind, no worse. It saw everything too clearly. Blood ran from the corner of his mouth. He spat it onto the cracked stone. Then he spoke. Malachite, not a whisper, not a growl. A vow heavy enough to make the stone under his feet flinch. I swear on my soul, he said, voice low and full of that particular stillness that comes after a scream, on every goddamn star in this miserable sky, I'm going to find her, and I'm going to teach her what pain means. His voice didn't rise. It sank like a weight into deep water. She's going to need a new set of teeth, he continued, flexing his bruised fingers. Because I'm knocking out the old ones one by one. I am going to grab her by the throat and personally scalp her, and then a touch. Gentle, steady. A contrast so stark it stopped him cold. A hand on his shoulder. Naruto. Willow. Alive. Dust-covered but whole. Rising from the rubble behind him like an angel carved of snow and steel. Her long pale hair was streaked with soot and split ends, and the blue of her dress had darkened with ash. She limped as she approached, brushing off splinters and coughing through the dust. She looked like a statue stepped down from its pedestal, an angel carved from glacier and grief. He didn't turn to face her, but his shoulders, taut as drawn bowstring, stilled. You good? She coughed once, shallow and dry, before brushing a splinter from her sleeve. Barely. You? He gave a bitter half-smile, anger slowly. Getting real tired of crawling out of holes. She stepped closer. The smell of smoke was thick between them. Her voice was quiet, scratched raw by dust, but somehow still soft. Are you all right? Her eyes met his. Blue and battered, but calm. She didn't ask if he was injured, only if he was all right. That made it so much worse somehow. I'm fine, he said too quickly. He glanced across the shattered plaza once, a cheerful market square, now nothing but blood and ruin. A doll's scorched head lay near a crater. A fruit stand had become kindling. Here and there, wisps of smoke still flickered like the dying afterglow of a flare. She set the charge beneath the plaza, he muttered. It was classic misdirection. All that talking? The charm, the banter, just stalling. She knew exactly what she was doing. Willow limped to his side. The wind tugged at her ruined sleeves. She surprised us, she said, her voice firm in a different way, gentle but not weak. That's not the same thing as outsmarting us. He looked down at his fist. Only one of them still closed, his metal arm twitched, spitting sparks, fingers twitching. He'd need to see Watts about getting it repaired. No, he said at length quietly, his fingers curled tighter. It's worse. Children's voices rang out sharp, breathless threading through the ash and ruin. Miss Schnee! Hey, is that Mr. Foxface? The shouts tore through the still-hanging smoke like birdsong after a storm. Naruto turned, his muscles tensed on instinct. But it wasn't danger coming. It was familiarity, rushing in on small feet and panicked lungs. From the alleyways and wreckage they came, half a dozen soot-smeared children, orphans, their ragged clothes darkened by ash and fear. The same kids he'd spent the past week bickering with while he gathered intel, sparring, shouting at when they cheated during drills. Now they were here, racing over broken carts and collapsed stalls, hopping down the shattered bones of the baker's pavilion like mountain goats born in slums. A red-haired girl, what was her name again? Mika, skidded on the cracked stone and flung herself at Willow, clutching her like a lifeline. Her arms wrapped tight, face buried in the folds of Willow's ruined dress. We saw the blast from the upper tier, she gasped. Are you okay? Are you hurt? Willow staggered slightly under the force of the embrace, then knelt, slowly gathering the girl into an arm, brushing soot from her forehead. We're all right, darling, she murmured, soothing. Naruto protected me. Naruto didn't look over. He didn't need to. Damn right I did, he muttered, voice low, rough. He turned his attention back to the plaza broken stones, scattered flame, screams still echoing from far-off rooftops. His anger hadn't cooled. It never did. It just sank, like magma beneath a crust of self-control waiting. Then, oi, the voice rolled in like a drunkard's cough. A shadow detached itself from the splintered remains of a once colourful awning, limping towards them through the wreckage. He looked like a wreck himself, bruised, bloodied, and dragging his weapon behind him like a beaten animal. Crow Branwen, still breathing, still sarcastic, still alive. Little Cinder trailed after him, with Sienna BR Roman and Neo bringing up the rear. They weren't hurt, but they did look dirty and tired. The former took one look at the children around them and scowled. Whoa. Seemed someone was jealous. Crow winced with every step, but lifted his flask anyway, taking a long, shameless swig before speaking. The smirk on his face hadn't suffered despite. Neither had his voice. Tell me you're the reason Malachite ran, he said, sounding impressed and exhausted at once. I'd hate to think I went through hell for nothing, Willow tutted, still tending to the orphans. You had troubles of your own? Of a sort, he rasped. Someone came after me and the kiddos while I was watching them, Willow hissed. His temper sparked. And where is this someone? Cinder buried her visage into his waist and wrapped her arms around him, hiding her expression from him as she spoke. He's dead. I killed him. Course she had. She might be young, but she was a maiden, just like Willow. He'd expect no less. Good girl. He patted her head. Daddy's proud of you. Sienna butted her head against his back. I helped. He scratched her ears, drawing a pleased purr from her. Hey, hey! Roman shook a boyish fist. She might have got the leader, but me and Neo corralled the rest. The old man would have been dead without us. Crow squawked like his namesake. Old? You heard me, geezer. Of course you helped, dear. Willow drew the flamboyant boy close. We'll get you something nice after this. Roman flushed and tugged down his cap. Neo preened silently. Crow coughed. So, about Malachite? Naruto didn't turn. She gone, he said, voice like steel scraped on flint. He clenched his one good fist. She won't stay gone. Crow nodded, letting out a long breath through his nose. Nope, spider like her. She always finds a new hole to crawl into. Then the smile vanished. But we've got a bigger problem. Naruto finally turned, brow arched. Bigger than someone trying to murder me and a bunch of kids with high explosives. Crow didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a half-charred scroll, tossing it underhand. Naruto caught it without blinking. The parchment crackled beneath his fingertips. Headmaster Lionheart, Crow said, rolling his shoulder with a wince. He, wants a word. Naruto frowned. He didn't recognize the name. Who the hell is Lionheart? Willow, still kneeling beside the children, glanced up. The headmaster of Haven Academy, she said gently. He runs the school here in Mistral. Naruto opened the scroll. The handwriting was neat, almost perfumed. Too clean for a city still coughing up fire. Why would a school principal want to talk to me? He asked, skeptical. Something about... Oh, I don't know, Crow said, stepping around a chunk of ruined stone and raising a brow. Property damage. He mimed air quotes and gave a dramatic sigh. Apparently blowing up half the lower district breaks some kind of law? Naruto stared at him, then at the ruins behind him. At the smoke, the screams still in the wind. At the small hand still clutching Willow's dress. He rolled the scroll closed with slow deliberation. Right, he said, voice cold, measured. If they want to talk law, then we can talk about the kind of laws that let this happen in the first place. I didn't blow anything up. Well, Crow muttered, scratching the back of his head with fingers stained in ash and dried blood, you did technically survive being blown up. He squinted at the rising smoke, the sound of sirens echoing faintly from the far side of the district. But you also might have, leveled 2 city blocks in the process of saving everyone. Naruto didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. His scowl deepened. So I'm being summoned by a school principal, he said dryly. What's next? Detention. A strongly worded essay on why vaporizing landmarks is frowned upon. Probably a few lectures, Crow replied, smirking sideways. You know, about consequences, public safety, and the importance of not melting through centuries-old infrastructure like a pissed-off dragon with a grudge. He paused, tipping his flask back for another swig. The grin faded behind the motion. His posture shifted looser in the shoulders, but heavier somehow. But that's not the real reason. Naruto turned, slowly. The air between them crackled, not with chakra, but with the feeling of something unspoken stepping into the room. Talk, he said. Crow didn't answer at first. Not directly. The wind kicked up, whirling soot through the street like black snow. Somewhere behind them, the children's voices had faded to soft murmurs, tucked into Willow's comforting presence. Finally, Crow sighed. That deep kind of sigh, the kind that carried years. Let's just say, he began, voice quieter now. Lionheart's been acting off lately. He glanced toward the city's looming upper tier, where white spires pierced the horizon like bones through cloth. He's been different. His decisions are strange. His loyalties, Crow frowned. Stranger. Naruto tilted his head, watching Crow through narrowed eyes. Stranger how? There was silence. Crow didn't answer with words. Not right away. Instead, he looked at the scroll again, as though expecting it to start bleeding. Then he looked at Naruto. Direct. Clear. Just go meet him, Crow said. But stay sharp. He hesitated. And your temper sharper. Naruto grunted. No more questions. He turned, holding the scroll for a moment. The paper felt warm in his hand. Wrong. As if it had soaked up the heat of the explosion, the tension of something else behind it. He handed it to Willow. She took it with trembling fingers, her other hand still resting on Mika's head. I'll go, he said. His voice was even. Calm. But even as he spoke the words, his body stiffened. Not with defiance, not with stubbornness, with instinct. Something shifted not in the wind, not in the rubble, but in him. The hairs along his arms prickled. The kind of chill that chakra couldn't warm. The kind of quiet that came before a scream. Something was wrong. And 0.0, 0.0. The wind howled cold and hollow through the alabaster courtyards of Schnee Manor. It scraped across marble like knives across glass, curling around ancient columns and whispering beneath archways untouched by time. The statues stood sentinel silent, austere, their blank eyes watching. They lined the path like the ghosts of forgotten kings, their gazes heavy with judgment, their postures weary from centuries of silent guard duty. Above them, towers reached into pale sky. The sun, low and reluctant this time of year, only managed to cast long, reaching shadows that clawed across the snow. Then, laughter, high, bright and untamed. A crack of joy through the gloom. Little winter Schnee hair silver in the moonlight, and far too curious for her own good, toddled between the statues with a blue ribbon trailing in her hand. It danced like a comet's tail behind her, catching the wind as she skipped between stone feet and forgotten heroes. She was humming. A song she barely remembered. Something her mother once sang, perhaps. Something soft. She was alone. Until she wasn't. From behind a sculpture, tall and forgotten, half buried in snow, a shape emerged. It wasn't abrupt. It was wrongly natural, like a shadow deciding to wear skin. A man. Clad in pale clothes, his form seemed to bend the light around him. His features were smooth, forgettable. His smile was practiced. And his voice, when it came, slid through the cold like a whisper behind the ear. Hello, little one, he said, crouching slightly. His tone was warm. But it shouldn't have been. Would you like to come with me? He asked. I have sweets. Winter froze mid-step. The wind tugged at her ribbon. Her fingers clenched it tight. She stared at him, pale blue eyes narrowing, searching. She was young, barely old enough to walk, but old enough to realize something was amiss. Daddy said not to trust people with sweets, she lisped softly. Her voice wasn't frightened, just certain. The man's smile widened a touch. Not enough to show teeth, just enough to lie. Fair, he said. But what if I offered you death instead? Winter inhaled. Her eyes bulged. Her chest rose. She opened her mouth to scream. Crack! A weathered cane struck the man across the back of the skull with all the subtlety of thunder-breaking marble. He pitched forward with a strangled grunt, snow exploding around him in a cloud of dust. Winter tumbled backward and landed poorly on her butt, but she didn't care. Because there, standing behind him, one hand on his cane, the other adjusting his collar, was Nicholas Schnee. Grandpa! The old man's eyes twinkled beneath brows like frostbitten thunderclouds. "Well now," he said, his voice, that particular brand of aristocratic steel, sharp, cold, and utterly unimpressed. "Offering sweets to my granddaughter, are we?" the would-be kidnapper groaned. Nicholas poked him in the ribs lightly with the polished end of his white walking stick. "Poor form, really," he tutted. "If you're going to steal a child, at least wait until after supper. We're civilized people." Winter stared, eyes wide, not with fear but fascination. Grandpa didn't glance at her. He was too busy sighing. "Now then," Nicholas said, straightening with a creak of old bones. "Let's see who sent you." The would-be kidnapper blinked, once, then turned, and ran. Or rather, he attempted to do so. He made it half a step, just half. Something fell from the rooftops like a star unhinged from the heavens. Fast, sharp, joyful in its violence. A sickening crunch echoed across the stone as the man was driven face first into the courtyard, ribs audibly snapping beneath sudden crushing weight. "Mine." The word coiled in the air like a prayer uttered by a madman. "Riddle me this!" The voice that followed was high, lilting and laced with manic delight, like a child discovering a new toy in the shape of a corpse. "What do you get when a god and a maiden have a child together?" His victim groaned underfoot, unable to rise. "The answer might surprise you. Shall I give you enlighten you? You get—" Winter clapped her pudgy little hands, accidentally mangling his name. "Uncle Tywin." Tyrion Callows crouched atop the assassin's back, his knees grinding into the man's spine. His head tilted at an angle no human's neck should allow, violet eyes glittering with something between hunger and reverence. His tail flicked lazily behind him, its barb gleaming even in the low light like a promise written in poison. "Not quite, beloved niece." The madman tittered merrily. "You get a goddess." Still laughing, he looked back to the bad man, the man who tried to take her away. "And you, sinner, dare to touch her? Blasphemy!" A wet gurgle was the answer. "Touch the goddess child again," Tyrion breathed, nose nearly touching the back of the assassin's skull. "And I will carve your lungs out through your spine while singing you lullabies in 7 different keys." The man began to sob. Not weep-sob. Loud, animal, broken. Tyrion's smile widened as though he'd been complimented. From her place among the statues, Winter tilted her head. Her ribbon had fallen to the snow. Forgotten. "Grandpa, why does Uncle Tywin talk like that?" she asked softly. Nicholas didn't blink, didn't flinch. He simply pulled a handkerchief from his breast pocket and began calmly wiping blood from the tip of his cane. "Because," he said, stooping low to sweep her up into his arms, "he's very effective at his job. Come along, dear, let's get you dinner. Your uncle's going to be rather busy for the rest of the evening. I believe your Uncle Watts will be joining us tonight." "Ooh!" If he was coming, that meant he would bring Penny and Alma. Quite so. Adjusting his grip on her, Grandpa allowed her to peek over his shoulder. "Say good night to Uncle Tyrion." "Good night, Uncle Tywin Tilda." Tyrion giggled. "Worry not, dearest niece. I'll join you for dessert." Winter waved over Grandpa's shoulder. She really did have the best uncles. Still, she was sleepy. Tyrion held his smile until they rounded the bend and were well out of sight. Even then, he waited another 3 seconds, just to be sure. Then he stopped smiling. At length, he looked down to the slowly dying man trapped under his boot. Now then, with a flick of his wrist-mounted knives emerged in all their silver shining glory. Out came his tail, not to sting, that wouldn't do, but to roll his victim over onto their broken back. "You will tell me who sent you after the goddess child one way or another." He tutted softly, setting one knife to the man's belly. "It's merely a question of how much pain you're willing to endure." His prey began to blubber and beg. "Mercy!" Tyrion giggled. "Mercy? There is no mercy." With a whistle, he began his holy work. The assassin did not survive the night. 0.0. Naruto entered Haven Academy alone. He didn't trust the guards, didn't trust the soft lighting, didn't trust the blonde receptionist who smiled too widely and bowed too low. He didn't trust the smell of disinfectant, didn't trust the silence, didn't trust the fact that he felt nothing in the walls. No aura, no chakra, no emotions. Dead space. Where was everyone? He was led into a marble office, filled with scrolls and dust. The fireplace flickered low, untouched by warmth. Lionheart sat at the desk, fingers steepled. "Ah, Mr. Uzumaki," he said far too gently. "Please, sit." Naruto did not sit. "You summoned me." "I did." Lionheart's eyes glimmered. There are questions about your presence. He parted his hands and began to drum his fingers against his desk. The accident in the lower district. Damage like that cannot go unpunished. I don't suppose you caught the culprit. Something stank here, and it wasn't Lionheart's aftershave. Wasn't an accident, he retorted flatly, not giving an inch. It was an ambush. Yes, Lionheart murmured, tapping the desk anew. But you see, perception is everything. And the council believes someone must answer for the chaos. Especially when that someone is a man we don't fully understand. Naruto's eyes narrowed. So you're blaming me? Not blaming, the man placated, raising his hands, merely inquiring. If it weren't for me, that blast would have taken an even bigger chunk out of the city. Nevertheless, I am placing you under temporary arrest, Lionheart said, standing. For investigation. Silence. Then, no. A flicker of chakra lit the room. I don't think you understand, Lionheart began. Naruto raised a hand. No, you don't seem to understand. His voice dropped like thunder. I'm not from your kingdom. I don't follow your laws. I saved those kids. And if you think you can collar me for it, you've picked the wrong damn fox to bite. Chakra burned golden behind his back. You do realize I'm practically the head of the SDC in all but name these days. By threatening to arrest me, you're starting an international incident. We both know the Schnee family won't stand for it. Yet for some damn reason, you're still hell-bent on it. Why? His lip curled in distaste. All for the sake of perception? What perception? You and I both know I didn't have a damn thing to do with that explosion. Without me, your body count would be well into the hundreds. Any investigation would clear me eventually, and you know it. Leonardo tried to rally all for naught, which is all the more reason to submit to one in the first place. Ordinarily, he would agree with that sentiment, but something was off here. On a whim, he flared his chakra and stepped forward. Lionheart backed up too quickly. Not fear. Panic. Guilt. Naruto saw it, felt it, the emotion flaring from the man like spoiled meat. What are you hiding? Nothing, Lionheart sputtered. I am merely doing my duty as headmaster of this school and city to ensure order. Then why aren't the police here? Naruto challenged. Where is everyone? Why are we alone? We both know they wouldn't be able to secure you. He's hiding something. The doors opened behind him. This the SDC guy you were talking about, headmaster? What, him? He doesn't look so tough. Ha! He looks weak. Naruto heard the voices and the footsteps that came with them. Some heavy and solid, others light and soft. No need to look. He knew there was a squad of huntsmen and huntresses behind him. Civilians wouldn't be anywhere near enough, which meant he turned his head to the right anyway, counting their numbers. Only 2 teams, 8 in all. Pathetic. A slow, sad sigh parted his lips as he flexed the damaged fingers of his metal arm. Do you have any idea who I am? One woman, a striking beauty bearing long red hair and green eyes, nodded once. We do, sir. Well, wasn't she a respectful little thing? Then you should know this. You don't want this fight. One of them, a big, burly brute that could have given Hazel a run for his money, laughed and began to crack his knuckles. Neither do you, old man. Old? He sputtered, outraged by the insinuation. I'm younger than you. Enough, Lionheart gestured with one arm. I could take him into custody. That was all the answer Naruto needed. You should have brought more. Chapter 38. Naruto went to see who? Ozpin, wait! Where are you going? To prevent all hell from breaking loose. On Remnant. Tilda. Just a freak. Naruto exhaled heavily, blue eyes ablaze with anticipation. The acrid scent of smoke and dust hung in the air, a stark promise of impending violence. 2 full teams of huntsmen stood arrayed before him. 8 trained fighters, each bristling with weapons, dust, and who knew what sort of semblances. He vaguely recalled reading about this lot in the paper. Supposedly they were the best Mistral had to offer. He was vaguely aware of their names, more or less. They were supposed to be strong. Paragons of truth and justice. Yet here they were, protecting a man he suspected to be corrupt. A hush fell over the 2 groups before him, the 4 members of Team On VX Onyx and 4 of Team ENBR, Ember, their postures stiff and cautious. A soft, sad sigh parted his lips as he regarded them, idly flexing the damaged fingers of his metal arm. Do you have any idea who I am? One of them, a woman, a striking beauty bearing long red hair and green eyes, nodded once. "We do, sir." "Well, well, well." Colour him surprised. Wasn't she a respectful little thing? Maybe he'd go easy on her. He rolled his shoulders, idly loosening the buttons of his jacket as he did, the better to tear it free at a moment's notice. "Then you should know this. You don't want this fight. None of you do. Step aside." For a moment, just a moment, he thought they'd back down. "So that's it, huh?" One of them, a big, burly brute that could have given Hazel a run for his money, laughed as he began to crack his knuckles. "We don't want this fight. Neither do you, old man. We're gonna do this the easy way or the hard way." "Old?" he sputtered, outraged by the insinuation. "I'm younger than you." "Enough!" Lionheart gestured with one arm. "Take him into custody!" That was all the answer Naruto needed. You should have brought more. Summoning every ounce of his vast self-control, he waited for them to make the first move. He remembered the vow that burned inside him, the promise to make their enemy pay. A quiet vow on his soul, uttered over the rubble of a shattered plaza and broken bodies, now spilled strength into his fists, his jaw set in determination. Innocent or note, these huntsmen and huntresses were in his way. It no longer mattered if they were complicit in Lionheart's sordid schemes or not. They were in his way. Words had failed, so he chose violence. "Don't kill them, Naruto." "Oi, I ain't that far gone. Besides, I need witnesses." His gaze flicked to his surroundings, idly considering every item in the office. Not the best place for a fight. Lionheart's office might be big, but it wasn't that big, and having 9 people about. 10 if you counted the craven coward crouching behind his desk. There wasn't any room for wide-area jutsu, which meant clones and Rasen Shuriken were out. He was already being blamed for enough collateral damage today. Not his fault. That had been the freak with the overamped semblance and a bunch of hidden minds besides. Malachite would pay for that in due time. But for now, the redhead he'd never gotten her name tried valiantly one last time for peace. "Headmaster, please, this is excessive." "If we just wait for the authorities," the as-of-yet unnamed big man grunted at the redhead. "Can it, Vanessa? Orders are orders!" Lionheart swept an arm forward. "Seize him!" Not happening. In a single swift motion, Naruto launched himself forward. Naturally, he targeted the weakest link first. On the first charge, he sidestepped a volley of crystalline dust shots sent his way by the young hunter Arlo, who had conjured a swift stream of icy projectiles from his gloves. Instantly adapting, Naruto unfurled a shadow clone that split to the left just as a shot tore through the space where his torso had been. The clone ducked under Arlo's follow-up attack and retaliated with a flurry of precise strikes to the younger man's left ribs. Naruto flickered back into existence and darted behind Team Onyx's lead huntsman, mercilessly targeting a weak point in his aura. Nearby, one huntress, clearly their leader, took action. She planted both feet, her shimmering semblance forming a spiraling breeze of gleaming metal petals around her. In a voice edged with calm authority, she shouted, "Back off! This is your only warning." Her words fell on deaf ears. Reason held no meaning here, only strength. An old teachings raced through his mind. Never leave an enemy a chance to hurt others. Likewise, the older woman's threatened gale was no match for his resolve. He lunged forward into the vortex without fear, conjuring a Rasengan as he ran, channeling a mere sliver of his chakra into the roaring orb of spiraling wind and light. Some stray dust ignited around the Rasengan, and with a low growl he sent it spinning right into her defenseless side. No time for her to react. The blast hit the huntress squarely, and a sharp crack split the air as his chakra-imbued impact drove through her semblance. Her eyes widened in shock, and though she staggered, she didn't fall. He had felt her aura flare under the blow, fracture but not shatter. He'd seen this happen before. In a similar struggle against the White Fang, he'd once smashed a foe's helmet with a dull crunch, pinning him down in a flurry of vicious punches. Aura didn't mean jack when your opponent punched faster than the speed of light and hit like a falling star. He may as well have been both insofar as she was concerned. Before her comrades could close in on him, he moved in and with a wild shout of, "Ora, ora, ora!" quite literally pummeled her senseless. 9 quick punches shattered her aura completely, leaving her swaying weakly on her feet with her aura down. She was hardly a threat, but he knew better than to turn his back on an enemy. One final roundhouse to the face put her down for good, and this time, the red-headed huntress grunted as she crumpled to one knee, clutching at the broken chain of a necklace that bore her family's crest. She swayed there for a moment before she fell flat on her face. Naruto pivoted, eyes gleaming gold, and beckoned to the rest, making a come-hither motion with his metal hand. Behind his desk, Lionheart recoiled with a whimper. 2 down, 6 to go. In other words, next. The remaining hunters balked in alarm, but he didn't give them time to regroup, nor did he relent. Anger burned in his like a furnace, and he banked the flames for fresh fuel. He sprang into a spinning crescent kick that cut through the unsettled air, severing the remaining breath of aura around yet another opponent, the lithe huntress Selene. Orange sparks scattered as his boot connected. She crashed backward into a bookcase, sending ancient tomes spilling to the floor. A shock of pain crossed her face, not from the cut he'd left on her shoulder, but the realization that she was outmatched. "Why, you little—" Naruto didn't give her the time to finish. He felt nothing but focus as he laid into her. Each strike was precise, strategic, targeting her vitals. He struck true, tearing into his foe's chest, slashing through her defenses like they didn't even exist, targeting joints and weak points where aura was weakest and could be shattered. 3 seconds. That was it. 3 seconds to lay her low. 3 measly seconds and Selene slumped to the floor, eyes rolling back in her head. 3 down. 5 to go. The last remaining member, Samson, tried to swing a halberd at Naruto's head, only for him to backflip aside and counter with a pair of chakra-charged kunai to the legs. The man went down with a yowl, clutching at his thigh, which left him perfectly open to an uppercut that slammed him headfirst into the ceiling. His face burst through the plaster, leaving him hanging there, embedded in the roof as his feet flailed fitfully. 4 down, 4 to go. Even as the dust settled from the first team's defeat, Naruto was already turning toward the second. His metal arm shifted, sprouting a vent just above the wrist, crackling with electricity. "You can make this stop whenever you want, Leo. Tell them to back off." Now he could have said those words, but he didn't, because he was angry, downright livid. Furious, Lionheart saw the murder in his eyes and shrieked, diving down behind his desk like the weak-willed waster he was. "What are you doing? Get him!" Team EMBR's youngest, the burly brute who dared to badmouth him before, clenched a fist, his gauntlets sparking to create a burst of flame dust. The fireball whistled past Naruto's ear as he dodged, leaving it to detonate against another bookcase, setting it ablaze. Poor aim, and poor technique. Were he a teacher, he would have flunked him on the spot. My turn now. Naruto swung his metal prosthetic arm forward with an audible clack of sound, its built-in bearings firing off a concussive shockwave that simultaneously flattered Frank and blasted the remaining members of Team EMBR clear off their feet. One of the huntresses rolled to dodge behind an upturned table, but he remained relentless. He kicked her cover aside and launched it out the nearest window in a shower of glass, forcing her to guard her face with one hand for a moment. In that instant, he summoned a shadow clone. The copy vaulted high and slammed down a massive Rasengan at the cluster of 3. It exploded in a furious pulse of violet energy, knocking one huntsman to the ground and burning blackened scorch marks into the floor wood. A huntress named Marisol, the clone's target, let out a short cry as Naruto cut into her aura. When she lashed out at him, he vanished before her eyes and reappeared at her flank. With the quick, practiced thrust of a kunai, he subtly punctured the side of her dust cannon. When she backstepped for distance and tried to fire, she realized the nozzle had shattered. Fine orange powder hung suspended in the air around them. Too late, she realized her mistake. Her ruined weapon did the rest. In an uncontrolled burst of flame, the powder flared like a miniature sun, forcing the remainder of the team to shield their eyes. Her burnt body slumped to the floor in a crater of her own making. Another one down. By now, a plan had coalesced in Naruto's mind by now. Divide and conquer. He dispatched one last clone to grapple the burly Frank around the waist, lifting him off the ground and tossing him out the broken window down to the city below. What remained of his aura saved his life. The man landed on his back with an audible crunch, limbs twitching. He wouldn't be walking anytime soon, but he'd survive. Snarling, he sprinted toward Matisol's stunned partner, a young huntsman by the name Jorin. The younger man brandished a massive axe, but he never got the chance to use it, Ducking low, Naruto delivered a spinning elbow strike directly into the younger man's face. His opponent crumpled, aura flickering out as he joined his comrades in unconsciousness. Just like that, it was done. He hadn't even broken a sweat, barely a hair out of place. Shame the same couldn't be said about Lionheart's office. The place was starting to go up in flames. Might want to put those out with a water jutsu. A ball of molten rock caromed off the back of his head before he could. The sneak attack easily deflected by aura, yet just enough to turn his face aside all the same. Irritated, he rounded on the one responsible, and sure enough, he was incredibly disappointed. Lionheart lowered his weapon. Stalwart, the irony of such a cravenly coward giving it that wasn't lost on him, trembling from head to toe, face slick with sweat. His eyes widened in fear as he limped backward through the haze of smoke and spent dust. "What are you?" The words were a rasp, little more than a frightened gasp. "Just what the hell are you?" Naruto's blood roared in his ears as he whirled to face him. The once-revered beacon instructor raised both hands, doubtlessly trying to surrender, but he could read the tension in it. The man was scared out his wits, half mad with fear. You're not human or a faunus. You're not! You're something else." Lionheart babbled on, blind to the backlash of his own impotence. "She tricked me. She didn't say you would be this strong." Naruto bristled from head to toe. "She?" The faunus froze. "Who is she?" Lionheart edged backward, eyeing the broken window. Naruto body-blocked the fat fop and shoved him away before he could fling himself into oblivion. "Who is she?" "I can't tell you. She'll kill me." Naruto stalked forward through the smoke, devouring the distance between them in an instant. Lionheart must have seen an end in his eyes, because he balked and backpedaled. "Wait, make him pay." Naruto didn't dignify Kurama's remark with an audible response. He simply lunged. His first blow was a thunderous straight punch that shattered Lionheart's jawbone with a resounding crack. The once great huntsman yelped as blood trickled from his mouth. He staggered back, fingers sliding against his split lip. Leo's eyes widened in shock. He was clearly out of practice, his glory days long behind him. Still, he held up an arm, trying to block the next strike and bring Stalwart to bear. Naruto slapped it aside like a child's toy, rage spilling from every pore, and launched into a merciless barrage against Lionheart. A shower of blows rained down like a battering hammer. Palm strikes ripping at the feeble faunus guard, swift elbow jabs into his ribs, and a knee that caught him in the stomach, forcing the air from his lungs. Somewhere in the chaos, Leo managed a word. "Naruto, please!" "Mercy!" But he ignored it. He had long ago sworn never to kill without cause, but in that moment, those words were drowned by the ache in his chest and the tremor of bone under his fist. In another life, he'd failed to put down a villain when he should have. He would not make that mistake again. No, never again. It wasn't long before Lionheart's face was a mass of blood and bruises. When his strength wavered, Naruto seized him by the hair and swung him around, launching a leg sweep that sent the old instructor crashing to the ground amid upturned chairs and burning bookshelves. "Tell me!" Naruto snarled, shaking with rage. He raised both arms overhead and linked his hands overhead, a classic strike that brought them crashing down on Lionheart's head. Leonardo bit off a scream as his own skull snapped down. The floor beneath him trembled mightily. The older huntsman went still except for a ragged gurgle. "No, no, no." Growling, he seized Leonardo by the neck and gave him a vicious shake. "You don't get to pass out. Not yet." Lionheart didn't answer. What did I just say? "No passing out." He shoved Chakra into him, making his blood boil, forcing him awake. "Ah, I didn't know." The faunus voice broke, rising in a high, reedy wail of pain. "I swear." Naruto thrust his forehead against his, teeth gone sharp, eyes blazing red. "Swear to me." All right, I'll talk. Just stop." Naruto relented. Lionheart's head lolled to one side, his pupils mere pinpricks of pain against his bloodshot sclera. This is karma, isn't it?" He laughed hysterically, a thin line of blood dribbling from his lips. "All those lives I sacrificed, everything I gave to buy Mistral time, it's all come full circle." Naruto squinted down at him. "What are you talking about? You really do know nothing." Lionheart grasped at his wrists with weakened hands, feverishly flinging spit in his face. "Imbecile. You were supposed to die today, perish in that explosion. You and your children. And if you survived, you'd be blamed for it. But you've made it so much worse for yourself. Naruto stomped down on Lionheart's left ankle, obliterating it. The faunus wailed in pain, bravado broken. He screamed louder still when he repeated the process on his right ankle, crippling him. From there, he seized him by the shoulder with his metal hand, squeezing viciously until the man's collarbone crumbled and his begging redoubled. "Where's Malachite?" he demanded of him. "Tell me where she's hiding and why I can't sense her." "Gone," Lionheart rasped, gasping for air. "Out of Mistral, out of your reach. You'll never find her. She serves our queen now, just as I did. She'll be cast aside too once she's outlived her usefulness." Naruto locked down onto that one word. The queen? Salem. For a heartbeat, the office was utterly silent. Dust motes glittered in a shaft of sunlight through a ragged awning. Naruto's chest rose and fell in loud, ragged pants. He glared at Lionheart's prone form, shock beginning to seep into the edges of his vision to overtake his anger. He hadn't meant to do this, to go this far. Somewhere deep down, under the seething spiral of anger and adrenaline, his resolve wavered, and the reality of his actions crashing onto him like a wave. Lionheart laughed the laugh of a damned man, going limp in his grasp. "Just you wait. She'll come for you too, just as she did me. In your weakest moment, you'll beg to serve her." Gritting his teeth, Naruto shook his head and forced himself to rally. "I'd rather die." Lionheart cackled brokenly. "I said the same once. Yet here I am. Monster? Maybe so." A surreal sort of calm had settled into the former headmaster now. He knew he was doomed. It only remained to be seen how much damage he caused before he died. "All that I did, every crime, each conflict, I did for the good of Mistral. If I hadn't bent the knee to Salem that night, she would have killed me and put a puppet in charge." Anger sparked anew and had him throttling the faunus all over again. "That's exactly what you are. How many people did you give up to her? How many innocents?" Lionheart lowered his gaze, both ashamed and resigned to his fate. "Enough for Mistral to survive." Naruto scoffed. "For you to survive." "I am Mistral, boy," Lionheart rasped back. "Were it not for me, Haven would have been wiped off the map long ago. Ice overtook fire. With it came a surreal calm. The city will rebuild. Without you. I'll see to that." Leonardo saw it and went paler than a schnee. "You wouldn't?" "True. Only a short while ago, he wouldn't have." "But now?" Naruto seized him by the throat with both hands. There were no witty words, no clever quips, just silent intent. Lionheart gurgled in surprise and gripped at his wrists to no avail. He wasn't letting up and certainly wasn't about to let go. Haven's headmaster began to panic, thrashing like a madman. He scratched and clawed and screamed and begged for mercy. When pleading didn't budge him, Leonardo desperately unloaded Stalwart into his face, peppering his whiskered visage with white-hot dust once, twice, 3 times until his weapon finally clicked empty. Even then, Naruto, he didn't relent. He systematically choked the life out of him, inch by inch. Aura buckled. Lionheart's body trembled as he rasped out his last breath. "Not like this!" At that very moment, a figure burst through the doors. Professor Ozpin rushed in, cane tucked under one arm, all but forgotten as he took in the scene. Broken warriors on the ground, burning bookshelves, Naruto looming over Lionheart's body. The old headmaster's face went pale with concern as he took in the scene. "Naruto!" he called out, rushing forward. His voice was calm, yet carried a deep note of authority and care. "There's no need for this. Release him." He didn't look away from Lionheart, not once, not for a second, not allowing even the slightest distraction. "He's a traitor," Ozpin blanched. "That may well be, but you can't kill in him cold blood." "That's not justice. That's murder." "Justice?" Naruto motioned to the nearly unconscious Lionheart. "Where's the justice for his victims?" "They shall have it," Ozpin planted a hand on his shoulder. "I assure you." "Think of the intelligence he could give us." Lionheart tried to nod, but could only manage a twitch with Naruto's hands around his throat. The traitor tried to speak, but he didn't hear him. Rather, he couldn't. The dead cried out for vengeance. He could hear them. Their voices were so loud, drowning everything else out. Naruto's fists twitched. His heart hammered against his chest like a blacksmith's drum, guilt and rage struggling within. He knew justice. He knew mercy. And he knew just how close he'd come to losing Willow in that blast. He could just image her torn body and the children's screams echoing painfully in his mind. Had he been a few seconds slower, they might have paid with their lives. Malachite had escaped his grasp, but Lionheart had allowed her atrocities in the first place. He'd opened the door to Salem. Hatred for her, for the unseen enemy who hurt his family, still burned hot. He'd broken the bastard's legs, but he couldn't trust Lionheart not to find a way to escape. Moreover, he didn't deserve a lenient sentence, not after all he'd done. It was so easy to say you'd take the high road, wasn't it? Justice, karma, vengeance. Leo had to pay. Naruto, stop! Ozpin pleaded with him one last time. This isn't you. This isn't who you want to be. He needs to face the people of Mistral and pay for his crimes. Rationally, yes, but he wasn't feeling very rational right now. That said, Naruto shook his hand off with a low growl. Have you ever raised a family, Oz? Beacon's headmaster flinched. As a matter of fact, yes. Naruto turned molten eyes on the immortal man, with sickered visage set in stone. Tell me, would you spare Lionheart if he tried to bomb your family out of existence? Ozen was silent for a long moment. Almost an eternity, El. At length he sighed, shoulders slumping in defeat. I would not. Leonardo wailed shrilly. Ozpin, you can't be serious. However, he continued apace, I still maintain that we need him alive. However, killing him like this, it isn't justice. Naruto's grip slackened, duly noted. Lionheart slumped with relief and ignored. Doubling down, Naruto seized Lionheart's throat and squeezed with renewed intent, fingers biting deep into the jugular of the Faunus. Leo gasped, eyes bulging, hands scrabbling at his face to no avail. Naruto, no! Ozpin attempted to intervene with a shout and was summarily backhanded across the room for his trouble. Don't get in my way. Turning back to Lionheart, Naruto intensified his grip on the man's neck. He came for my family. This is justice. Twisted it now. Snap! Chapter 39. Do you think you're special? Uzumaki, you aren't. I've seen many men like you. More than I can count. All those heroes who thought they could defeat me. Do you know what became of them? They all perished. In the end, you're just another corpse on the pile. More like me, you say. Ha! Why do you laugh? Isn't it obvious? Even after all these years, you still don't understand. There's nobody on Remnant like me. You can slow me down, sure. Stall me, maybe. Delay me. Yeah, on a bad day. But stop me. I'll say it again, just in case those dusty old ears of yours forgot how to hear in the last 1,000 years. There ain't nobody like me. Tilda, let the monster out. The news spread quickly. Far too quickly for Naruto's liking, almost suspiciously so, some might say. Almost as though a certain someone had anticipated this very outcome and set a trap. Bah, who was he kidding? Of course it was a trap, and he'd stormed right into it without a second thought. Salem had planned her attack well, all things considered. Perhaps that was her plan. Shock and awe or horrify, in this case, the world of Remnant as a whole. Divide them, and in doing so, sow fear amongst the masses to create discord, which would in turn ferment into negativity across the 4 kingdoms worldwide. She had well and truly sacrificed Lionheart, thrown him on the pyre without the slightest hesitation. Whether the Faunus was found to be guilty or not, it no longer mattered. The deed was done, the dice cast. Grim would be drawn to these hotspots like moths to a flame. Really, it was a brilliant scheme. Downright vile, even. Yet she'd made one. Fatal. Mistake. She'd gone after his family. Oh yes. He knew about the ill-fated attempt on Winter's life, just as he knew Nicholas and Tyrion to have handily thwarted it. Funny thing, that. Because make no mistake, he did find it funny. Not the ha-ha-ha kind either, you know. More the you little fool sort. He'd really thought he would be angrier than he was right now. And he was upset. That much was never in doubt, but his was a distant rage, cold as the kingdom he'd adopted, befitting of the family he'd all but married into. He'd been willing to give Salem the benefit of the doubt, you know? So long as she let him be, he would let her be. He couldn't destroy her. And she couldn't destroy him, but he could damn well smack some sense into her if she was just willing to sit down and talk, assuming she wanted to talk someday. But no, this was the way she wanted to play. This was the road she had chosen. This was her decision. Well, all right then. She'd made her bed. She'd flipped that switch. She burned that bridge. Monster it was. A lesser man might have bowed before the pressure, folded like a house of cards, but he knew the truth. Why should he care what the people of Remnant thought of him? It had only stopped him before when he was young and naive, when he craved fame and adulation above all else. He wasn't that boy anymore, hadn't been for some time now. In hindsight, he knew how it must look. It was inevitable, really. After an explosion like that in the centre of the city and all those casualties, Mistral was on high alert. They couldn't exactly sweep an attack on the headmaster under the rug now, could they? To be fair, Naruto was sure Ozpin did his best, despite his deeds, yet even his influence wasn't enough. No matter what he did, the fact remained that Mistral was baying for blood. Vale was demanding answers. Vacuo had closed its borders. The less said about Menagerie, the better. As for Atlas, well, he'd sent Willow and the rest home ahead of him, then went willingly himself 3 days later, after tying up some loose ends. Hence his late arrival tonight. Naruto strode through the thick iron doors of the Schnee estate well past nightfall, shoulders heavy with exhaustion. He had slipped back into the city under cover of darkness, burdened by far more than the travel. The faint gleam of the manor's overhead lights caught on his whiskered face and the metallic sheen of his prosthetic arm. Soot and ash still clung to his jacket from the fires in Mistral. He hadn't bothered to clean up, he'd come straight home. Home. The word tasted bittersweet tonight. He barely had time to exhale before he heard the thudding of small feet on polished marble. A high-pitched squeal cut through the entry hall. "Daddy!" a tiny voice cried. A blur of white and blue barreled into him. Winter launched herself at his legs with all the force her little body could muster. Naruto grunted in surprise as Winter wrapped her arms around his knees in a ferocious hug. Despite the weight on his heart, he found himself smiling. Damn it! How did she always manage to do that? Chuckling softly, he scooped the little girl up into his arms. Winter's bright, ice-blue eyes, so much like her mother's, sparkled with pure joy. "You're back!" she declared, as if announcing the world's greatest news. She nestled against his chest without an ounce of hesitation. "I'm back," he confirmed softly, pressing a tired kiss into her snowy hair. He cradled her close, breathing in the innocent scent of soap and baby powder. For a moment, the nightmare of Mistral felt distant. Winter's small warmth against him was real, safe, home. The reunion in the foyer was anything but quiet after that. "Oi, save some of that for us, shrimp," came a drawling complaint from round the corner. "You're crowding him." A tall figure in a white coat leaned against a nearby column, arms crossed. Roman Torchwick smirked around the reed between his teeth. He was still much too young to smoke, no matter what complaint his might make. But Naruto noted was a touch of envy in his foster son's green eyes as he watched Winter cling to his neck all the same. At Roman's side, Neapolitan mimed a sulky pout, her two-toned hair swishing as she cocked a hip. Her mismatched eyes narrowed at Winter, and she wagged a finger dramatically as if scolding the toddler for stealing all of his attention. Little Winter only giggled and buried her face in her father's chest. In response, Neo silently stuck out her tongue in mock offense. A quick flicker of aura and the mute woman's semblance shimmered around her. For a heartbeat, Neo's form shifted into a comical caricature of Winter, a tiny illusionary duplicate with puffed cheeks, hands on hips, stomping an angry foot. Naruto had to bite back a laugh at Neos' exaggerated display of jealousy. "Easy there," he chuckled, tightening his arm around Winter while addressing the dynamic duo. "There's plenty of me to go around." His attempt at humour came out more strained than he intended. In truth, he felt like a wrung-out rag, his body and soul aching from today's events. But he mustered a reassuring grin nonetheless. Such was his duty as a parent, after all. He'd always have a smile ready for his family. Kurama coughed audibly. "On your left." And speaking of parental duties, a pair of calloused hands tugged at his sleeve, demanding his attention. Cinder stood just beside him now, looking up with a carefully neutral expression that didn't fool him for a moment. He'd seen her at her neediest back when he'd first snatched her off the streets, and he recognized that a familiar little pout of hers, one that said she too desperately wanted a hug and absolutely refused to make herself look weak by asking for one. He reached down to tousle her dark hair. "Was there something you wanted, Cinder?" Her golden gaze darted to Winter, then quickly flitted away, gaze flickering with maiden flame. "Welcome home," she mumbled, trying to sound indifferent. Naruto could hear the waver of relief under her tone. On Naruto's other side, Sienna Khan hovered with equal impatience. The young faunus prouder than any of the great jungle cats she resembled crossed her arms over her burgundy nightrobe with an indignant huff. The black stripes on her tan cheeks stood out starkly in the light, and feline ears twitched as she sniffed pointedly. We were starting to think you'd gotten yourself lost. Her ears twitched atop her head, betraying her excitement despite her best efforts at cool disdain. She was glad to see him safe, too. Naruto's throat tightened. Here they were, his kids, by blood or by bond piling around him in one piece, safe. He hadn't realized how badly he needed to see them until this moment. For a second he just closed his eyes, soaking in their presence like a man dying of thirst. A soft hand settled on his back, warm even through the fabric of his shirt. Naruto opened his eyes to find Willow standing beside him. Her smile was gentle and understanding, though concern pinched the corners of her elegant features. "Welcome home, dear," she said, voice low and full of love. Her free arm encircled both Cinder and Sienna, drawing the girls against her in a tender side hug. They went willingly. Cinder even leaned into Willow's touch just a little, while Sienna pretended not to but didn't pull away. He lived for little moments like these. "I'm home," he echoed quietly. Without a second thought, he reached out and pulled Cinder in against his left side, kissing the crown of her head. Then he extended his metal right arm, the servos whirring softly, to tug Sienna over as well. The faunus child resisted for all of 1 second before allowing herself to be embraced, her small fingers curling into the fabric of Naruto's coat. For all her bluster, Sienna pressed her forehead against his ribs just as hard, eyes squeezed shut. Roman cleared his throat loudly, ruining the moment's serenity. He stepped forward with a comically affronted look. "Hello? Earth to Whiskers. Did you forget about us already? Some of us also waited up for you, you know." Neo flanked him, nodding vigorously. She produced a small notepad from her pocket and scribbled something, then held it up. In neat handwriting it read, "Group hug," accompanied by a crude doodle of several stick figures embracing a fox-like figure. She tilted her head, feigning an innocent look as she tapped the page. Naruto huffed a laugh. "Trust these two to lighten the mood." All right, get in here." Roman's brows lifted in surprise. Clearly he hadn't expected an invitation, but he wasn't about to refuse. "Well, if you insist, Tilda," he said airily. In the same breath, he sidled over and, with only a split second of hesitation, patted Naruto on the shoulder. It was an awkward, one-armed hug at best, but Naruto appreciated the gesture in his own way. Roman tried to play it cool, but he clapped his back perhaps a tad harder than necessary, as if to hide any sentiment. "Try not to scare us like that, boss. We need our fearless leader intact," he quipped. "Who else is going to keep this motley crew in line?" Neo, for her part, answered her own question by simply wrapping her arms around Naruto and Winter from behind, completing what was now indeed a group hug. She hugged with surprising strength for someone so petite, and Naruto felt her sigh against his shoulder. Willow watched the pile of people around Naruto with open affection in her ice-blue eyes. A soft, contented laugh bubbled from her lips. "Goodness, give the man some breathing room," she chastised lightly, though she made no move to break it up. In fact, she stepped closer and, with little Winter still balanced on Naruto's arm, planted a chaste kiss on his cheek. Her voice dropped to a whisper for him alone. "I'm so glad you're safe." Ugh, right in the feelings. He'd never get used to that. Domestic life or having a family? Yes. Naruto leaned into her just a moment, closing his eyes at the comforting brush of her aura. "Me too," he murmured honestly. He only wished his safety hadn't come at such a price. The memory of Lionheart's broken body threatened to intrude on this warm scene. He banished it forcibly. "Not now. They don't need to know yet." He opened his eyes and mustered a smile for all of them. "I missed you guys," he said, trying to sound normal. Cinder smirked, folding her arms with faux petulance even as she stayed tucked against his side. "Obviously," she sniffed, little nose in the air. "We're amazing. Who wouldn't miss us?" Sienna perked up, playing along. "Well, maybe next time you'll think twice before sending us ahead," she said, though her watery grin undermined her attempt at scolding. Her ears twitched with undisguised happiness now. Little Winter, not content to be left out, lifted her head from Naruto's shoulder and reached one tiny hand toward Roman's hat, which sat precariously on his head as always. "Woman! Hat!" she babbled excitedly. Roman blinked. Pardon? Willow covered a laugh behind her hand. I believe she's addressing you, dear. Naruto's grin widened a fraction. Winter hadn't quite mastered all her words. Roman was still beyond her, but apparently hat and man-woman got mixed up in translation. Roman's face went through several amusing contortions as he passed that out. Neo silently doubled over in laughter, shoulders shaking. She gave Roman an exaggerated thumbs up and mouthed, "You heard her, woman." Roman groaned theatrically. Out of the mouths of babes, "I am mortally wounded," he proclaimed, clutching his chest in mock despair. But he bent lower so Winter could snatch the bowler hat right off his head with gleeful speed. The toddler plopped it onto her own head, immediately obscuring half her face. A chorus of chuckles filled the foyer. Winter beamed at her successful heist, completely unaware of the tension that had gripped the adults only moments before. Naruto couldn't help but laugh softly. Somehow, seeing Roman Torchwick bereft of his trademark hat while a child wore it crookedly was the exact comic relief he hadn't known he needed. For a few precious seconds, everything felt normal. Chaotic, yes, but normal for the family he had built. A future master criminal grumbling without heat, a silent trickster teasing him, two former street kids bickering over who got to hug him first, and an heiress, turned mother reigning over them all with indulgent warmth. This bizarre patchwork of people was his, and he wouldn't trade them for anything. But the real world refused to stay away for long. Over Roman's light, complaining, "That hat cost a fortune, ya know, take care of it, munchkin." And Winter's giggles, Naruto caught Willow studying him more seriously. Her gaze drifted over the scorch marks on his coat, the faint red splatter. Blood? Dust residue? On one sleeve, the strain in his posture. She was a perceptive woman. Naruto saw her lips part about to ask the question he dreaded. Before Willow could voice her worry, however, a new sound cut through the reunion. The low whir of engines outside, followed by the slam of car doors. A muffled, polite cough came from the still-open entryway. Klein, the Schnee family butler, poked his head in. "Pardon the interruption, Master Naruto," he said in his crisp accent. "Doctors Watts and Polendina have arrived, and they have brought, guests." The butler's moustache twitched, as if he couldn't decide whether to be puzzled or concerned. Naruto gently set Winter down, to Roman's immediate relief, as he retrieved his hat from the tot. "They're early," he murmured. He hadn't expected them until morning. A mixture of relief and wariness coursed through him. On the one hand, he was eager to see the results of their work. On the other, he wasn't sure he had the energy for any more surprises tonight. Still, if they'd come all this way at this hour, it had to be important. Willow arched an elegant brow. "What?" she repeated. Any warmth in her tone cooled a few degrees. Cinder and Sienna tensed subtly at the name as well. Naruto could almost hear the unspoken question from all of them. "You invited him? You know I don't approve of his recent creations." "Hey now, he's doing good work for Atlas with all those... The man is becoming a warmonger." On that, they disagreed. "It's a long story," Naruto sighed. Everything was these days. "He's been doing some work for me, and we'll be polite hosts. Isn't that right, girls?" His blue eyes flicked pointedly to Cinder and Sienna, each of whom immediately wiped the scowls off their faces, or at least attempted to look neutral. Cinder had never entirely got on with Arthur Watts despite the gifts he'd given her, but then again, she disliked anyone who might be competition for, his attention on principle alone. Sienna, protective as ever, mirrored Cinder's skepticism with a stubborn jut of her chin. Willow still looked uneasy, but she nodded. She would withhold judgment, temporarily. "Meh, fine with me." Roman tipped his hat while Neo nodded silently. "Long as they didn't bring their twin terrors with them." Naruto looked away with a pointed whistle. Roman grimaced. "Oh, hell. Don't tell me they brought Penny and..." Klein opened the door wider at that very moment, allowing the newcomers to step inside. "Doctor." Pietro Polendina entered first, limping slightly as he leaned on his cane. The round, bespectacled man gave a broad wave with his free hand, his face splitting into a proud grin at the sight of Naruto and the gathered family. "Good evening. We apologize for the late hour," he began, voice chipper and kind. But this simply couldn't wait." "Yes, quite." Behind Pietro shuffled Doctor. Arthur Watts himself sharply dressed in his usual crisp suit despite the late travel. The mustachioed man adjusted his bolo tie, surveying the foyer with a critical eye and a tight frown towards Cinder, looking rather like he'd bitten into a lemon. "Lovely, I see the entire family's in attendance, even the strays." Cinder hissed. Winter waved his way. Uncle Arthur? Watts sputtered, face flush. Yes, hello to you as well, my dear. No one's eyes were on the doctors for long, however. Two familiar figures trailed after them, capturing everyone's attention immediately. Roman flung up his arms with an exasperated cry. I knew it! They got another upgrade! Naruto couldn't blame the poor boy for thinking so. To Pietro's right stood a young girl with vivid copper-orange hair tied in twin tails. She looked about 14 now, with bright green eyes that practically glowed with curiosity. She wore a short-sleeved Atlas Academy student's uniform beneath a white capelet, despite the late hour. The girl's gaze snapped from person to person in the room, and she offered a hearty wave as soon as she caught Naruto's eye. Salutations, she said brightly. It's so nice to see you all again. My name is... Sienna laughed into a fist. We already know who you are, Penny. The green-eyed ginger pouted. Oh, you recognized me? But of course, Cinder sidled up to her, golden eyes raking over the synthetic girl's new body. We're friends, are we not? Why repeat yourself? Truly? Penny held up a finger uncaring as Neo poked and prodded at her. Father says repetition is the key to victory. Watts scoffed. Yes, he would, wouldn't he? Pietro laughed merrily. Roman rolled his eyes. Look, you don't have to say the same shtick over and over again. We get it. Penny blinked innocently. But if I do not repeat myself, then how will you remember me? She actually meant those words. Her enthusiasm was even more genuine than the wide grin wreathing her face. Naruto almost found himself smiling back automatically. Penny's cheer was certainly infectious, but before he could respond, his attention was drawn to another figure. Right, he'd forgotten all about her, hadn't he? At Watts's side stood another girl, appearing around the same age as Penny, perhaps a year or two younger. She was the very opposite of Pietro's daughter in demeanour. Where Polendina bounced on her heels and grinned, this girl was still and quiet, half hidden behind Watts's taller form. Her hair was a soft ash brown, cut in a neat bob that framed a delicate face, her skin an ashen grey. She wore a simple red dress under a lab coat, the latter of which was a few sizes too large for her slim frame. But what struck Naruto most were her eyes, molten and a warm hazel, and, unmistakably, alive with awareness. The girl met his gaze shyly. Something in her expression flickered recognition. Relief? She stepped out from behind Watts with measured grace and sketched a clumsy curtsy. Was that, well? It was. He'd not seen her in a while. She'd gotten quite the upgrade. Hello, she said softly. Her voice was calm and clear with a curious lilt to it. I'm not certain if you recognize me. She glanced up at Watts as if for approval. The doctor gave a curt nod and she continued, a small, hopeful smile tugging at her lips. I am delighted to see you again, grandfather. Right, he technically was hers, wasn't her? Her and Penny both due to his chakra contributions. Even now, sometime after the fact, Penny and Alma were standing proof of the impossible. Two artificial girls, one born of technology and aura, the other. Naruto wasn't even sure. Chakra and science interwoven? Yet here Alma was, looking and behaving like any other timid teenager. Her eyes were full of emotion as she regarded him. Naruto realized he was staring. He cleared his throat, stepping forward out of the cluster of family still around him. In any case, Wicklum, he said warmly. He gave Pietro a nod and even managed a polite smile at Watts. Good to see you both, doctors. I take it the trip from Argus went well? As well as can be, Pietro replied, his moustache twitching happily. Young Miss Penny here was very excited to tag along. He chuckled and patted Penny's shoulder. The orange-haired girl beamed and shifted eagerly, as though resisting the urge to explore the giant entry hall like a kid in a candy store. Watts, meanwhile, stepped forward with a click of his polished shoes. His gaze swept Naruto from head to toe, lingering on the obvious battle wear and tear. We made excellent time, he said dryly. Though I suspect that's not the only reason for your surprise summons. He adjusted his glasses, eyes narrowing shrewdly. You sounded agitated on the call, Uzumaki. Something about an incident in Mistral? At that, the jovial mood dimmed. Willow's hand found Naruto's again, this time squeezing as if in reassurance, or perhaps to steady herself. Cinder and Sienna exchanged worried looks. Roman removed the reed from his mouth, suddenly interested, while Neo raised an eyebrow. Naruto's jaw tightened. He had almost for a blissful few minutes forgotten the darkness he'd left behind in Haven. Now it rushed back in, oppressive and cold. The attack. The betrayal. Lionheart. He forced himself to breathe evenly. There was an attack, he said slowly, in Mistral. We walked into a trap afterward. His voice came out flatter than he intended. Or I suppose you could say I did. Cinder moved closer, concern overriding her earlier jealousy. Are you hurt? She asked quietly, eyes flickering over him for injuries. The question was simple but laden with fear. Sienna's ears pressed down anxiously as she too inspected him. I'm fine, Naruto waved them off before Roman and Neo could descend upon him. Physically, that was mostly true. His aura had taken the brunt of the explosion and the fight after. The bruises and scrapes he'd earned were nothing serious. The real wounds were deeper. What's made a low sound of intrigue? This wouldn't have anything to do with the rather dramatic news coming out of Mistral right now, would it? He inquired. Of course he was already sniffing out information. The rumour mill is in a frenzy. Some kind of bombing and then a running battle at Haven Academy of all places. Pietro looked stricken at this news, his gentle eyes widening behind his spectacles. Oh dear, is everyone all right? We heard only bits and pieces. James, that is to say, General Ironwood mentioned some incident when he authorized our airship flight clearance, but he was tight-lipped. Naruto grimaced. Leave it to Ironwood to keep a lid on things until he knew the full story. There were casualties, he said, voice low. He saw Willow flinch ever so slightly at the reminder. It could have been much worse. We stopped it before, well, he shook his head, before my family got hurt, before they succeeded in killing us. But he didn't say that out loud. He couldn't meet Willow's eyes right now, afraid he'd see the horror reflected there if she knew just how close it had been. Watts' gaze sharpened. Ever analytical, he peered at Naruto as if dissecting him. And by we, I suspect you mean you. You look like you went through the ringer, my boy. His tone was oddly indecipherable, equal parts clinical and curious, with a hint of dark amusement. Just what exactly did you do in Mistral, Naruto pursed his lips. I can neither confirm nor deny my actions. Pietro tilted his head. Now, sounds like a non-answer if I've ever heard one, doesn't it? That question hung in the air and the foyer fell silent. Naruto sensed all eyes turning to him. Even little Winter, who didn't fully understand but felt the shift in mood. Watts's query was straightforward, but the weight of it was anything but. I chose violence, he thought bitterly. I broke my own code. I did what had to be done. Kurama rumbled his agreement. You were in the right. You did what must be done. Do not hesitate. Show no mercy. It was so easy to say those words, wasn't it? Actions spoke louder. Belatedly, he realized his hands had clenched into fists. Slowly, he relaxed them. I took care of it, he answered, trying to keep his voice even. His heart thudded against his ribs as flashes of Lionheart's terrified face, his pleas, his betrayal, flickered through his mind. The others were still staring, expecting more. They deserved to know, but not here, not with the children present, and not before he sorted it out himself. He cleared his throat. Details can wait, he added firmly. His tone left little room for argument, and no one, not even Penny or Alma, dared to take him up on it. What's important is that the threat has been removed, for now. Everyone I care about is safe. He put an arm around Willow's waist, drawing her and the girls closer, as if proving to himself that they were unharmed. She searched his face with worry but didn't push, though he could tell by the tightness around her eyes that she would be asking him for the full story the first chance she got. Watts opened his mouth, perhaps to press further, but Pietro subtly nudged him and interjected gently, Of course. It's late, and we've all had a trying day, it seems. The kindly doctor offered an apologetic smile to Naruto's family. Forgive our manners. We barged in without a proper introduction. Didn't we, Penny? He motioned with one hand, and his daughter stepped forward eagerly, her grin returning as she presented him with a small case. Here's the data disk you asked for, grandfather. Naruto accepted it with a sigh. Thanks. Accepting it, he stowed it in the satchel he wore at his belt. Alma was next, presenting him with a small silver cylinder. The item itself didn't interest him. Its contents did. She bowed her head and handed the cylinder to him. Please be careful, father made it very potent. Watts preened like the criminals he wasn't. Days like these made him glad he'd recruited the good doctor before he could turn to a life of crime. Regardless of his recent technological advances. But Alma had turned earnest eyes toward him and he must attend. Is there anything else that you require? The cylinder joined the data disk in his satchel. He'd need both of these items soon. Not yet. Can I count on the two of you going forward? Penny saluted. Affirmative. I am combat ready. As ever, she delivered her signature catchphrase with such earnestness that even Cinder blinked in confusion. Roman chortled under his breath. Combat ready, huh? That's reassuring? He muttered. Neo elbowed him sharply in the ribs, shooting him a sideways look. Alma took a more hesitant step forward and inclined her head. I as well, she said again, softly. Her hazel eyes flickered from Naruto to Willow and the rest. I do not have a catchphrase like my sister, I'm afraid. There was a tiny note of humor in her soft voice, and the ghost of a smile appeared. But I will gladly render my assistance if need be. Willow was the first of Naruto's family to recover, ever the gracious hostess and endlessly compassionate mother. She disentangled herself from his side and approached the two new girls. You have our thanks, she said, offering each a warm smile and a warm hug besides. I don't quite know what Naruto's up to. The latter averted his gaze, refusing to meet her eyes. But I'm sure he appreciates your aid. Penny preened and promptly snuggled into Willow's embrace. I was right. Hugs are warm. Alma had no such audible response, but she too latched on tight, almost as though she were afraid she wouldn't see Willow again anytime soon. Cinder sidled closer to Naruto and whispered, though not too quietly, Are we sure they're quite all there? Alma seems unusually quiet today. She eyed Watts in particular with open suspicion. The fiery young girl still didn't trust the moustached man. She wanted all of his attention to herself and no other. Naruto could hardly blame her. Watts sniffed disdainfully, overhearing as he adjusted his gloves. Rest assured, young lady, I'm not your enemy, he drawled, rolling his eyes behind his spectacles. I prefer to keep things professional, such as tsundere. Before Cinder could retort and Naruto could feel her gearing up, Pietro intervened with a good-natured laugh. Now, no need for fuss. We're all allies here, yes? He gave Cinder a grandfatherly smile. Naruto has told me so much about you all. It's wonderful to finally meet his family in its entirety, even in a somewhat stressful setting like this. Winter waved from her perch, blind to the byplay. Cinder blinked, somewhat disarmed by Pietro's genuine warmth. Sienna crept forward as well, drawn by curiosity. So how does it feel to be an android? She asked bluntly, feline eyes fixed on Penny. Always one to cut to the chase, that girl. Do you feel cold? Or, despite her wariness, the Faunus girl's voice held a note of reluctant awe. Penny's smile brightened further at the recognition. Indeed, I am artificial, she confirmed, completely guileless. She tapped a finger to her chin thoughtfully. Though I like to think I have a soul too. After all, my father gave a part of his to create me. She patted Pietro's arm affectionately and the older man flushed pink with pride. This seemed to thaw the last of the tension. Cinder's eyes widened at Penny's frank admission, and her innate curiosity overpowered her earlier caution. She'd always pretended not to be interested, but now Naruto saw recognition and excitement in her face. Does that make you immortal, then? Alma stepped closer to Penny's side, almost protectively. Penny is special, she said, quietly insistent. She's my sister, in a way. That got a few surprised blinks, Naruto included. Alma flushed, looking at him apologetically. I'm special too. Father created me using grandfather's chakra and several other advancements besides Naruto. In a way, he's... She trailed off as if unsure how to phrase it. Watts coughed into his fist, his cheeks coloured the slightest bit. In a sense, you could consider yourself a godfather of sorts to the project, he said briskly, clearly uncomfortable with the sentimental direction. But the specifics can be discussed later. Roman snickered. Godfather Naruto, huh? Better not refuse any requests on this, the day of his daughter's creation. He tipped his hat, thoroughly amused with himself. Naruto groaned softly, but the atmosphere had indeed lightened. Willow was already fussing over the new arrivals in full mother-hen mode. You girls must be exhausted from your journey, she declared, moving to guide Penny and Alma further into the house. Sorry to cut your vacation short. Come, we'll get you settled in the guest rooms. Have you eaten? Klein can prepare a late supper. Or some hot cocoa, perhaps. Penny clapped her hands delightedly. Cocoa sounds delightful. I've never had it, but I have read all about it. Alma simply nodded, looking quietly overwhelmed by Willow's kindness but not opposed. Roman raised a finger and asked the question on everyone's minds. Can you actually eat? Alma's hand shot up. One way to find out. As Willow shepherded the two girls toward the living area, with Klein scurrying ahead to arrange refreshments, Pietro followed, chatting amiably with Willow about the flight. Roman trailed after them, curious to poke at the newcomers with Neo in tow. Neo had already conjured an illusion of a steaming mug over her head, wordlessly seconding the idea of Coco. That left Naruto, Watts, and his older children momentarily alone near the entryway. Cinder and Sienna lingered at Naruto's side, clearly reluctant to leave him now that he was back. Watts regarded the two girls with an inscrutable expression. Perhaps he noted the way Cinder's hand curled possessively around Naruto's sleeve, or how Sienna practically leaned on Naruto's leg, ears still half flat in lingering worry. The scientist shook his head slightly, a strange look, pity, respect crossing his features. Well, Watts said, breaking the silence, I'd say this family reunion is well underway. He lowered his voice, addressing him with a more businesslike tone. I suppose you'll want to debrief me further on the Mistral situation soon. Whatever happened, it's bound to have repercussions. He gave Naruto a significant look over. The shinobi exhaled slowly, biting down on a frown. Trust Arthur Watts to cut right to it. There was a reason he was the top scientist here, not Pietro. We will, he agreed. He gently disentangled himself from Cinder and Sienna, crouching down to meet their eyes. Girls, why don't you go join the others? Make sure Penny and Alma get their cocoa, yeah? Maybe show them the game room. Cinder frowned, clearly not fooled for a moment. You're sending us away, she accused in a whisper. Her eyes searched his, worry shining there. Why? I'll be along soon, Naruto promised. He put a hand on each of their shoulders. I just need to have a word with Doctor. Watson, handle a few things tonight. Sienna bit her lip. Tonight? But you just got back. Naruto's heart squeezed at the hurt in her tone. He pulled both girls into a quick hug. I know, kitten. I'm sorry. How badly he wanted to just collapse onto the couch with all his kids piled around him and forget the world for a few hours. But fate wasn't that kind. Not tonight. This is important. I wouldn't go if it wasn't. He mustered a small smile. Tell you what, save me some of those marshmallows, all right? I'll make us breakfast first thing in the morning. We'll talk then. Cinder's frown softened slightly at the mention of breakfast. His cooking was legendary in this household. Sienna sniffed and wiped at one eye with her sleeve, pretending she wasn't getting emotional. You better, she mumbled. And bacon. Lots of bacon. Sienna flung a hand in the hair. I want pancakes. Then pancakes you shall have, Naruto chuckled. He ruffled their hair affectionately, earning a token protest from Cinder about messing up her ponytail. Now go on. I'll be fine. I'll be better once this is done. Reluctantly, Sienna and Cinder trudged off after the others. Sienna gave Watts one last distrustful glare for good measure. The doctor merely adjusted his cufflinks, ignoring it. Cinder paused at the archway to the sitting room, looking back at Naruto with a troubled expression far too old for her little face. Don't be long, Dad. She may have stumbled over the last word, but he heard it all the same and his face lit up. You said it. Cinder Schnee flushed, squared her shoulders, and fled after Sienna. As their footsteps receded, the faint chatter of Penny marveling at a painting or Roman cracking a joke drifted in. Naruto straightened and turned to Watts. The genial pretense fell away, and both men got down to brass tacks. You truly know how to prioritize. I'll give you that, Watts remarked dryly. Most would debrief their allies before family bonding time, but I suppose they needed the reassurance. Naruto leveled a steely look at him. They come first, he said simply. It wasn't an apology. If anything, it was a warning. Watts might answer to him, and he appreciated his work more than most, but he wanted it abundantly clear. Nothing, no mission, no threat would ever take priority over his family's well-being. Arthur held up his hands in a placating gesture. Duly noted, he replied. An actual small smile tugged at his lips. Admirable, really. Had I a father with half your devotion? He trailed off, then sniffed and turned toward the door. In any case, Ironwood has been itching to speak with you. Shall we? Naruto grabbed his coat from where he'd tossed it earlier, shrugging it back on. He paused for a moment, gaze drifting toward the laughter and clinking dishes echoing from the parlor. Willow's musical laughter rang out, no doubt at Penny's earnest antics or Neo's silent charades. The sound was a balm and a knife at once. He hated to step away from it, but he knew he must. Just for now. Just for a little while. Just for tonight. This is for them, he reminded himself. He had to make sure no more threats would catch them off guard. With that resolve stealing his spine, he nodded to Watts. Let's go. Willow caught sight of them as they moved to depart. She excused herself from the others and crossed the foyer swiftly, worry evident in every step. Naruto? You're leaving again? Naruto gently took her hand. Only for an hour or two, he assured her. I have to meet with Ironwood. Willow's eyes widened, genuinely shocked. James Ironwood. She looked between Naruto and Watts as if suspecting she misheard. He couldn't blame her. He rarely, if ever, used the General's proper name. Usually it was far less polite monikers, and he certainly never sought Ironwood's company voluntarily. What on Remnant could be so urgent that you would meet him now, of all times? Watts cleared his throat, sensing a domestic dispute, and wisely stepped a few paces away to examine an old suit of armor on display, pretending not to eavesdrop, but definitely eavesdropping. Naruto cupped Willow's cheek with his palm, his thumb brushing her smooth skin. Her worry was palpable, and he hated adding to it. You trust me, he said softly. Please. I know it's sudden, but it's necessary. I'll explain everything when I'm back. I promise. Willow searched his face, seeing the determination and pain he couldn't quite hide. Slowly she covered his hand with her own and leaned into the touch. All right, she whispered. Just be careful. Both of you. Her gaze flickered to Watts. Though she remained wary of the man, she included him in the sentiment. Watts gave a curt nod, stepping back over. We'll be perfectly fine, Madame Schnee. The General is expecting us. Willow huffed lightly at the formal address. Technically, she wanted to take the Uzumaki name, but old habits died hard among Atlas elites. Instead of correcting him, she rose on tiptoes and placed a quick, firm kiss on Naruto's lips. I'll hold you to that breakfast, she murmured, a tiny spark of her usual playfulness returning as she tried to be strong for him. Don't you dare cook in that filthy coat, though. Naruto let out a genuine chuckle, feeling some tension drain out of him. Yes, Mom, he teased. With one last squeeze of her hand, he forced himself to turn away and follow Watts out into the cold Atlas night. The sky above Atlas City was clear, the stars like shards of ice in the darkness. The city's lights glinted off distant snowy mountains. A sleek black Atlesian transport waited in the drive, engines humming. Ironwood hadn't skimped on urgency. This was one of the General's personal craft, designed for speed and discretion. They boarded in silence. As the transport lifted off, Naruto took one last look through the window at the manor shrinking below. In one of the upper windows, he could just make out a cluster of faces watching Willow with Winter in her arms, flanked by Cinder and Sienna. They were worried, but they were safe. Naruto closed his eyes and let that knowledge center him. Steeling himself for what came next. What was the saying? There's a monster inside all of us. Time to let the monster out. Tilda, how dare he? James banged a fist against the desk, denting it deeply. Naruto weathered his tirade with quiet patience, letting the man vent. Once he might have viewed such anger as beneath him, downright disrespectful even. It had been some time, years at least, since he'd spoken to the General face-to-face without an insult or a cutting barb, and even longer since they'd been civil with one another. But time had done much to mellow him. He understood his viewpoint to an extent. For him, Atlas was family. He wanted to protect it, and as Atlas was where his family lived. Ergo protect that as well. Lionheart hadn't simply betrayed Atlas, he'd betrayed all of Remnant. James had grown up with the man. For him to turn like that, yeah, it had to sting. Drink? He offered James a glass and a bottle of hard whiskey besides. For a moment he wondered if the man would yank the bottle from his hand and break it over his head. Instead, he ripped them from his grasp and necked it outright. Poor guy looked a proper sight, his uniform in disarray, a noticeable stubble lining his chin, dark shadows under his eyes. Some light came back to them as he polished off the bottle. Please tell me you're not here to surrender yourself to Mistral. Nope. Naruto clasped both hands behind his back and moved the man's desk. May I? James slumped into his seat and motioned for him to do the same. Then why are you here? Don't think I didn't see Watts at the door. Why come here tonight? Because Ozpin doesn't understand why I did what I did, even if he claims otherwise. Naruto crossed one leg over the other and fixed him with a gimlet glare. I think you do. I'm aware of your semblance. James grimaced. Metal. Yes. It allows me to focus better than most, often to my detriment. He gripped his metal wrist, momentarily consumed in memory before looking his way once more. I'm surprised you know of it. What if I told you it could be useful for once? Clarify. Naruto told him. He told the general exactly what he intended. By the end of it, James grimaced. I don't think I like this side of you. That makes two of us. Naruto tapped his left foot against the floor, the very act of which created a small crater, such was his lack of restraint in this moment. I'm rather angry right now, you see? The false fingers of his right hand twitched, metal digits grinding together angrily until they spat sparks. No one understands. Not Team STRQ, not my kids, not even Willow. They all think they do, yet they don't. He leaned forward, planted both hands on James's desk. Leaned forward now, looming over the good general. But you do. He understood now. His initial aversion toward this man had been born not of paranoia, but naivete. When he first came to Remnant, he had still been himself, untainted by the harsh truths of reality. He had foolishly believed that if he just hit his enemies hard enough or talked smoothly enough, his enemies would be dealt with. And it had worked for a while, until it didn't. Mistral had opened his eyes. No, that wasn't right. They'd been open for quite some time now, but Anima had shown him the truth. This was war. And you know what they say. All's fair in war. Ironwood would give anything to keep Atlas safe from the forces of evil. That had never changed, nor would it ever. They had that much in common. Atlas was his home too, after all. He didn't fault the man, only his methods. It was time for a change. We're men of action, you and I. We've both fought in wars. And this right here. He ground a finger into the desk, eyes blazing. This is war, I told Lionheart that. Ironwood closed his eyes, steepled his fingers, laid chin atop them, and exhaled harshly through his noise. He was silent for a long moment, until he raised his gaze. I was under the impression you killed Lionheart. Naruto fixed him with a level look. Come and see. Tilda. Lionheart stared lifelessly at the ceiling. The ceiling stared back just as lifeless as him. At least it wasn't aware of its agony, or rather the lack thereof. This was torture. To be unable to do anything but breathe and stare at the ceiling. Unable to move, unable to feel, only able to stare. He hated it almost as much as his surroundings. The room was dark and smelled of sterilizing solution. The only illumination came from a single fluorescent light hanging directly above a metal chair, casting harsh light on the prisoner strapped within it. The corners of the room lay in shadow perfectly suitable for clandestine work. Deep in an Atlas military bunker located far beneath the academy, no one knew of his existence. These days, he was barely recognizable as the proud headmaster of Haven Academy he'd once been. His hair hung in lank, sweat-soaked strands around a face battered black and blue. A medical brace clamped around his neck and shoulders, locking his spine in place. Beneath the restraints, his body was deathly still. Only the ragged rise and fall of his chest indicated he was alive at all. His eyes, once shrewd and full of warmth for his kingdom's youth, now darted wildly, searching for an escape and finding none. In them swam terror and defeat, and the horrible knowledge that his suffering had yet to truly begin. The door opened. Two men strode through. Ozpin was not one of them. General James Ironwood emerged, arms clasped behind his back, facing him. He cut an imposing figure, broad-shouldered in his freshly pressed white military coat. The gleam of his numerous medals dulled in the dim light. The general's face was carved from granite at the moment jaw set, mouth a hard line beneath his trimmed beard, and pale blue eyes cold as the kingdom he protected. Uzumaki entered the interrogation cell after him with Arthur Watts in tow, and Lionheart's gaze flickered up to him with fresh fear. If Ironwood was surprised, he didn't show it beyond a slight raise of his eyebrow. Watts quietly shut the door behind them, taking up position by the wall. He produced a small scroll tablet from his coat, likely to record or transcribe the session. Ironwood cast the scientist a brief glance but refrained from comment. It still boggled the mind to see Arthur Watts' wanted criminal here under cooperation, but desperate times made strange bedfellows. Naruto stepped forward into the halo of light. That was when he finally allowed himself to look directly at the broken man strapped to the chair. Lionheart's lips moved. At first, only a croak emerged. Ironwood stepped forward, producing a canteen, and, with surprising gentleness, put it to Lionheart's lips. The disgraced headmaster took a few greedy gulps, water spilling down his chin. When he had his fill, Ironwood stepped back and wiped his hand on a cloth, wordlessly resuming his stern pose. "Thank you," Lionheart managed, voice hoarse. Then a wet, gurgling chuckle rattled out of him. How polite, giving a dead man a last drink. Uzumaki leaned over him. I'm told that you're paralyzed from the neck down. A hand patted his cheek, fingers digging in as they pinched. Not quite what I intended. I'd much rather you be unable to move all. The fact that you can turn your head at all speaks well for your aura. You must have been a very robust man in your heyday, Lionheart blubbered and crackled like an egg on the sidewalk. Please forgive me. There's no need for this. Naruto laid hand on his head and smiled. Of course I intend to forgive you. The faunus exhaled in relief. Really? Then... There are currently 23 people in Mistral who have gone missing. Lionheart faltered. What? 19 people have been buried under crumbling homes, the Schnee continued apace. Leonardo gulped. 13 people that burned to death in the fires. And still, not the slightest hint of anger in Uzumaki's voice. 38 people injured by falling debris. Oh, he knew where this was going. Nowhere good. Furthermore, the people who were torn apart, crushed, and reduced to mangled pieces of flesh by the horrors you unleashed in your own city. Here at last, he smiled. There are 127 of those. That's the total number of casualties in the upper city after Malachite and the exploding semblance freak set her blasts off. Although, I'm sure there are more we don't know about. Like all those huntsmen and huntresses you sacrificed to Salem. Why are you telling me this? Naruto's smile never wavered. Just as I said earlier, I will forgive you. That is, of course, only if you're willing to experience the same amount of suffering as all those I just mentioned. Once that's finished, we can talk about reparations and averting the impending war between our kingdoms. Wait, what in the world do you mean by the same amount of suffering? No need to worry. Ironwood clamped a hand down on his shoulder. You'll experience the same pain they went through, but you won't die. Even if we break off your legs and crush your innards, Naruto will make sure you are healed enough by the end to tell us what we want to know. Watts smiled. It was not a nice smile. I suggest you start talking. Lionheart blubbered in vain. Naruto set down his datapad and withdrew a silver cylinder from his satchel and opened it. There was a syringe within. If you can't tolerate the suffering and lose consciousness, Watts and I will bring you back. You can cry and scream as much as you'd like. Eyes rolling in his head, it was all Lionheart could do to speak. Why are you— Don't get me wrong, Lionheart. A hand gripped his jaw, muffling his protests. I'm not doing this because I want to. What I want is threefold. For you to regret your actions, tell me everything you know about Salem, and for you to thoroughly understand the pain you put your people through. That's all it's going to cost you for forgiveness. Incredibly merciful, don't you think? He offered the syringe to Watts, who approached with a grim smile. Now then, let us begin. Lionheart's shrill screams echoed long and loud through the night. No one heard him. Chapter 40. You know my game the day we met. Tilda, you really are a demon raven confronted him the next evening. She'd always been good at sneaking up on him with those portals of hers. One moment, he'd been alone in the quiet back courtyard of the Schnee estate, leaning on the cold marble balustrade to gather his thoughts, basking into the night. In the next, the air rippled and she was simply there, blocking the moonlight, Vernal perched on her hip. The toddler's dark hair and wide eyes peeked around her foster mother's shoulder, curious and unafraid, too young to sense the tension crackling between the adults. Giving the brat to her seemed to have worked out in her favor. Good. You did something. Her voice was low and edged with accusation as she stepped from the oval of crimson light that split the night air. Naruto exhaled, watching the portal behind Raven flicker closed. He wasn't surprised. A part of him had expected her to come back. Hoped, even. But not her. Not now. Not like this. Raven had an annoying tendency to make him raise his voice, and he had a feeling they'd be screaming at one another all too sooner. You've no one to blame for that but yourself. Way to throw a guy under the Beowulf there, Kurama. He turned to face her fully, squaring his shoulders. Did something, Whatever could you be talking about? Maiden fire flashed in her eyes, burning like an inferno. You know full well what I mean. Naruto mimed looking left, then right, finding nothing in sight. Do I? Raven! Don't you raven me, mister! She took a few measured steps forward, boots soundless on the cobblestones. Her free hand rested casually on the hilt of Omen. but her eyes burned scarlet in the dim light. Anger, worry. Was that last one relief? It was a complicated mix he'd long learned to recognize on her face, beneath the mask of cool indifference she liked to wear. She was upset with him, that much was clear. I can see it in your eyes, she continued, her voice dropping softer. You're standing here, Lionheart is missing from Mistral, and Ozpin is furious. Her gaze searched his face. You did something. Naruto felt a muscle in his jaw tighten. Of course she would cut straight to it. Raven always had a predator's instincts for weakness in others' defenses, especially his. He broke eye contact, letting his gaze drift to Vernal instead. The little girl's head was on Raven's shoulder now, but she was awake, sucking her thumb placidly. A pang of guilt pricked his chest at the sight. He'd entrusted Vernal to Raven's care, swearing that child would have a safer life than the one Raven's destroyed tribe could have given her, yes, but also, as a test, one it seemed she was on the verge of passing. And here he was, practically stewing in darkness that he hadn't yet dared voice to his family. Not even Willow. But it was necessary. Ironwood understood that. So did Watts. Even Kurama to a lesser extent. Sometimes the world didn't need a hero. Sometimes it needed a, well, Raven snapped into the silence, cutting his thoughts off, gaze narrowed. Aren't you going to deny it again? Tell me I'm imagining things. Her tone was tense, but underneath flowed an undercurrent of concern. Naruto knew her well enough by now, better than most, perhaps to catch it. He dragged a hand down his face. I'm not denying anything, Raven. I'm asking you not to pry. Tough shit. She adjusted her grasp on Vernal ever so slightly, but otherwise didn't take her eyes from him. I'm prying. As if that weren't bloody obvious. Ray. No, it's not your concern, she slapped him. He saw it coming and let her. Allowed her palm to crack across his face, cause his aura to flare, let the blow snap his face to the side. He didn't stumble a bit. Turning the other cheek, he sighed, pivoted, looked her in the eye now as he quirked a pale brow. Happy now? I didn't feel a thing. She slammed her forehead against his, eyes blazing. You're a liar, he pushed back, baring his teeth. So we're back to shouting again, are we? Surprisingly, his words seemed to trigger something in her, because she closed her eyes, took a deep breath, laid her free hand on Omen's hilt once more, and retreated 2 steps. When next her lovely lashes drifted open, the fire was still there, smouldering softly but no longer a raging inferno ready to be unleashed. Tell me it's not true then, she snarled at him. Tell me Lionheart isn't dead. Laughter burst out of him. Sharp and angry, he couldn't help himself. Dead? He snapped back, the words slipping past his lips before he could think to hold them back. Is that what you believe? Her eyes widened. Damn. Hadn't meant to say that aloud. They always brought out the worst in one another, didn't they? He made her passionate and she made him angry. He lost all control of himself whenever she was around. That was part of why he'd foisted Vernal off on her in the first place, in the hopes that it might mellow her out and help her become a good mother. He'd obviously succeeded in the latter, but not the former. Double damn. Why did he always have the worst luck when it came to Branwyn's? Every time. Naruto closed his eyes for a moment. He could still hear the echo of the disgraced headmaster's screams ringing in his ears, see the look of sheer terror on the man's face just before he and Watts went to work on him with their tools and stop. He forced the memory down. When he opened his eyes again, Raven was watching him intently, as if those crimson irises could pierce through him to read the truth from his soul. Perhaps they could. But he couldn't say the words aloud. Not here. Not where someone might hear. I dealt with him, Naruto said quietly. There was no use skirting around it. Raven valued directness, and in this he owed her at least that. After the trap at Haven. After all the people he betrayed and harmed, I dealt with him, myself. His voice came out more hoarse than he intended. He cleared his throat. It's done! For a long moment, Raven was silent. A breeze whispered through the courtyard, rustling the neatly trimmed rose bushes and carrying with it the scent of winter's first frost. Vernal stirred slightly in her arms, perhaps sensing the mood. Raven absently shifted her, adjusting the toddler's weight on her hip. Her gaze never left Naruto. I see, she said at last. Her words were carefully measured. Not condemnation, not yet, but something about her stance eased minutely. Naruto hadn't even realized how tensely Raven had been holding herself, as if poised to spring. Now she drew a slow breath. Why? Naruto blinked, incredulous. Why? He echoed. Why did you do it? Raven clarified, and there it was, the frustration bubbling just beneath her calm facade. Crow was in Mistral, and I know you and Oz had a falling out over this. Any one of them could have dealt with down that traitor, or carted him off to Atlas to rot in a cell. But they didn't. Her eyes bored into him. You did, and not cleanly either unless I'm mistaken. Naruto felt his heart thud harder in his chest. So she knew, or at least suspected, that what happened to Lionheart went well beyond a simple execution. Surprising. Did she have her own network of spies these days? Or had her semblance evolved when he wasn't looking? She might well have seen the aftermath with her own eyes for all he knew, peeking through one of those dimensional doorways of hers. He supposed the how she knew didn't matter, only that he did. He leaned back against the railing, bracing himself on both palms. The cold stone bit at his prosthetic right hand, sensors relaying the pressure and temperature up the metal arm. Because it had to be me, he said finally, voice low. Lionheart's betrayal wasn't just some crime to punish. It was a rot that nearly cost us everything. I needed to know why he did it, who else he endangered, and I needed to make sure no one ever follows his example. The world didn't know that Lionheart was even now suffering at the hands of Atlas, and it never would. They thought him dead. Better that way. People believed what they wanted to believe after all, and he was content to let them do so. Raven kicked his shin, demanding his attention. I would have helped, he sighed. I know. Raven's expression flickered, surprise crossing her face. Then why? His gaze flicked to Vernal in her arms. You know why. Idiot. She clicked her tongue at him. You keep trying to shoulder everything yourself. Let us bear some of the weight, too. You will break, she huffed. Then I'll ask my stupid brother and my damn team for help. She made it sound so easy. At length she schooled her pale visage into an emotionless mask once more. She stepped closer until only a pace separated them. Vernal reached out a chubby hand toward Naruto, perhaps recognizing him now. Cripes, she was getting big. The little girl gurgled out a vague approximation of his name, Nawu, each syllable, lisping a little in that toddler way. Naruto's chest tightened at the sound. He managed a small smile for Vernal and gently clasped her tiny hand in his for a moment. Her fingers wrapped around one of his, trusting and innocent. Raven watched the exchange, some of the hardness in her gaze softening. Vernal was good at that, unknowingly melting the ice both of them liked to encase themselves in. But despite that, her voice remained firm. And did you get what you needed? His reasons? His accomplices? Was torturing him worth it? Naruto flinched. Blasted Birdie never did mince words. He drew his hand back from Vernal, causing the toddler to make a soft whine of protest as he withdrew. Raven. He sighed anew and ran his left hand through his hair. It wasn't pleasant, he admitted. Pleasant was a grotesque understatement. The memory of Lionheart's shriek, the scent of burned flesh, and the sight of the bloody instruments they'd brought to bear upon even now turned his stomach. Yet he'd allowed it anyway. Monster it was, he had told himself. But yes, we learned enough. Salem's influence, how he'd been feeding her information for years, how he lured me into that ambush in Mistral. His voice dropped at the reminder of just how easily Malachite had played him. And we learned his so-called queen was willing to throw him away like a pawn the moment it suited her. She practically fed him to me. Raven nodded slowly. So she sacrificed him to slow you down. And to make the world fear me, Naruto said bitterly. He gestured vaguely in the direction of the estate's main house, beyond which the faint lights of Atlas City twinkled on the horizon. You've heard the reports, haven't you? Mistral is up in arms. The headmaster's fall, he swallowed, the carnage. The council there is demanding answers. Vacuo shut its borders out of paranoia. And Atlas has you under its wing, Raven interrupted. The SDC at your back, the Schnee name behind yours. You're practically one of them. There was a trace of something in her tone teasing, perhaps, even as she chastised him. Atlas will stand by you publicly. Privately, though, she arched a dark brow. I've heard General Ironwood wasn't exactly comfortable with what he witnessed. He wasn't the only one. Naruto grimaced. Ironwood's steely expression during Lionheart's final moments had betrayed little, but afterwards the man's tight-lipped concern that they'd crossed a line was evident. Watts had been thorough, as had he. Ozpin hadn't even asked, but he was sure he suspected something. These days, the headmaster of Beacons simply regarded Naruto with those ancient eyes, as though gauging how this chess piece had moved itself. And to think he had the gall to ask him to spare Lionheart. Ironwood will deal with it, Naruto muttered. He knows what was at stake. Ozpin too. Do they? Raven's question was sharp. Or do they think you've become a liability, doing things your way? She shifted Vernal from one hip to the other and took another half-step closer. Naruto could see his own reflection in her scarlet-slits eyes, no moonlight catching on the sapphire of his irises, the dark circles of exhaustion smudged beneath them. He wondered vaguely what she saw when she looked at him tonight. A friend? An ally? A dangerous rogue element? Perhaps an enemy? Truth be told, he wasn't sure anymore. That uncertainty gnawed at him. He turned away, gripping the railing to anchor himself. Below, the estate gardens were quiet and silvered with frost, their neat hedges and leafless birches dusted white. Naruto drew in a breath of the cold air, trying to steady the turmoil inside. "What do you want me to say, Raven?" he murmured. "That I regret it, or that I don't?" Raven remained silent for a beat. Then, to his surprise, she laughed, soft and short, barely more than a huff. "Ha!" The great Naruto Uzumaki, at a loss for words. There was an almost wry note to her voice now. "I never thought I'd see the day." Naruto angled his head back toward her. Raven's lips curved in a slight smirk, but her eyes, they were gentler. The tension between them had shifted, diffuse now that the blunt truth lay bare between them. He'd gone and done something terrible. But she hadn't condemned him for it, merely asking why. Knowing her, that was practically an olive branch. "Whether you regret it or not," Raven said quietly, "isn't really the point. What's done is done. My concern—" She caught herself clicking her tongue as if annoyed she'd almost revealed too much. "Our concern," she amended, "should be what comes next." He quirked a brow. "Ours, is it?" She slugged his shoulder, but the punch was half-hearted at best. "You heard me." Vernal, growing bored of the adult talk, began to squirm in Raven's arms. With a long-suffering sigh, Raven set the toddler down. Almost immediately, the tyke tottered over to Naruto's leg and clung to his pants with one hand, her other still firmly plugging her mouth with her thumb. He looked down and couldn't help the small, genuine smile that found its way to his face. Vernal gazed back up, her amber-brown eyes bright even in the dark, utterly trusting, until finally he bent and gently scooped the little girl into his arms. She giggled, nestling against him with familiar ease. Cute kid. Might give Winter a run for her money someday. Raven watched them, arms crossed loosely now. "The brat missed you," Raven noted. Her voice was nonchalant, but Naruto caught the faint hint of gratitude lingering within her words. He didn't regret convincing Raven to take Vernal in after the Branwen tribe massacre to not abandon the child, despite her protests that she wasn't suited to play nursemaid. In truth, Naruto suspected caring for Vernal had been good for her soul. Perhaps Raven knew it too, on some level. "Every day she tugs at my sleeve, babbling your name," Raven went on. "I suppose I should thank you. You've elevated me from possible bandit leader to babysitter. You were never going to lead those cretins, and we know it." She gave him a sour glance and looked away. Naruto gave a soft chuckle at that, one of the first real laughs he'd managed in days. "You're welcome," he replied lightly. He shifted Vernal to perch her on his forearm. The child immediately reached up to pat at his whiskered cheek. "And for what it's worth, thank you for looking after her. I know it hasn't been easy." Raven waved a hand dismissively, but not before Naruto saw a tiny, genuine smile ghost across her lips. "She's not so bad. Not nearly as loud as I thought she'd be. It's almost like she's your actual daughter." Raven's smile faded as soon as it came, and an awkward beat passed. Things were still awkward between the two of them. Naruto wasn't about to press on that wound now. Instead, he bounced Vernal gently, drawing a delighted squeal from the toddler. "At least she likes my stories," he said with a playful grin. "Has she made you read her the Hop Hop Ninja book yet? It's her favorite." Raven rolled her eyes, though Naruto didn't miss how the stiffness had gone out of her posture. "Only about 100 times. I can recite it from memory now. Thanks." She shook her head ruefully. "If my tribe could see me, legendary Raven Branwen, feared spring maiden, slayer of countless grim, now an expert in children's picture books." Naruto took a small step toward her. "They'd see someone who survived," he said softly. "Someone who protected the last of her people." He met Raven's gaze earnestly. You did right by Vernal. By your tribe's memory. What it should have been, not what it became. Raven's eyes searched his. For an instant, she looked on the verge of some caustic retort, but it died on her tongue. She glanced away, and he wondered if he saw her cheeks darken just a little, as if the praise made her bashful. That was new. She was typically all brash confidence. But then again, these days he often glimpsed new sides of her, the dutiful if slightly exasperated caretaker, the secret keeper who shared her burdens only with him, the woman whose sharp edges sometimes softened in unguarded moments. He realized belatedly that she'd stepped close enough for him to catch a whiff of her scent, steel and wind and a hint of jasmine. When Raven turned back, they were scarcely a foot apart. She noticed, of course. Raven missed nothing. Yet she didn't pull away. If anything, she lifted her chin, meeting him head-on with that familiar mix of challenge and curiosity. You said our concern should be what comes next, Naruto prompted gently. I assume you have something in mind. Raven breathed out slowly. Salem. The single word hung in the air, heavy and ominous. Vernal, sensing the change, babbled something and buried her face in Naruto's chest. He rubbed the child's back soothingly, trying to ignore the cold knot that formed in his own stomach at the sound of that name. Raven's expression hardened. Lionheart's been dealt with, and Malachite might have fled, but Salem's still out there. She has Hazel and who knows what else at her disposal. And now she knows you're targeting her inner circle. Tyrion, Watts, Cinder, they all might have gone to her side if you weren't here. The relics she covets remain out of reach. She doesn't have a single maiden to her name thus far. She tilted her head at Naruto. You have her attention now. I hope it's what you wanted. Cinder, for instance, might have been a powerful pawn in her clutches, but that'll never happen now. Naruto gave a faint snort. Cinder's transition from vengeful street rat to beloved, if prickly, adopted daughter, was indeed unexpected by any measure. But he didn't interrupt. Raven's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. I don't imagine Salem will forgive such humiliation. She'll change tactics. Regroup. She's ancient and patient. But cornered as she is now, she might lash out. Didn't he know it? He was still waiting for the other shoe to drop onto Hatfront. I know, he replied quietly. His organic hand reflexively went to Vernal's hair, stroking it as much to comfort himself as the child. Believe me, I haven't forgotten Salem's out there. I can feel her shadow behind every step we take. And that shadow was growing. Salem was immortal. Raven didn't know that terrible truth. He'd only become aware of it thanks to Lionheart's mad babbling. He'd sworn Ironwood and Watts to secrecy, but the fact remained. How did you kill that which could not be killed? He had his suspicions for Tome Time now, but he didn't dare voice them. Immortality was something to be feared, something to rail against, something that could easily cast your allies in despair. Unbidden, his mind conjured an image of Salem alone in her grim tower, seething at the loss of her pawns, yet plotting something new in the dark. Why did he always struggle with immortals? Honestly, if it wasn't Edo Tensei or Kaguya, it was something else. Raven moved again, and suddenly Naruto felt the warmth of her hand through his shirt sleeve. She had reached out, hesitantly, as if the gesture surprised even her, and laid her palm on his forearm. You don't have to fight her alone, she said, her tone brusque but earnest. You've got us. Foolish as that sounds coming from me. Naruto's eyes widened a fraction. Raven. Shush. She almost smiled, a rueful twist of her lips. The mighty Raven has deigned to offer you her aid. Don't make me repeat it. Such a tsundere she was. She squeezed his arm, then quickly released it, folding her arms across her chest again as though to reclaim her aloof persona. Don't misunderstand. I still don't entirely trust the old man, but he's a better alternative than that madwoman. She muttered the last part under her breath. But Vernal's safety, all our family's safety, depends on stopping that witch. You know it as well as I do. A beat of silence. Then she added more softly, and I won't let you lose yourself trying to do it all. There it was, laid out plainly. Her frustration, her attraction, her lingering camaraderie, all distilled into that quiet declaration. I won't let you lose yourself. Naruto felt something tighten in his throat. Raven had seen him at his best and worst, and somehow she still stood here, stubbornly offering him her strength in her own prickly way. He wasn't quite sure what he'd done to deserve that kind of loyalty from her of all people, but he knew better than to question it aloud. Instead, he nodded. All right. His voice was a little rough. He mustered a wry smile. I'll try not to do anything else that needs scolding, at least for a while. Raven rolled her eyes, but she stepped back with an almost satisfied air. See that you don't. Next time I might not be so gentle. This was her being gentle. Naruto laughed under his breath. He glanced down to find Vernal fast asleep against his chest now, tiny hands balled up beneath her chin. The tension of the night had finally caught up to the toddler. Gently he offered the sleeping girl back to Raven. Here, it's late. You should both get some rest. Raven carefully gathered Vernal into her arms. The child curled instinctively into her shoulder, sighing, and the Branwen's face softened as she brushed a stray lock of hair from Vernal's cheek. In that moment, with the moonlight limning Raven's raven-black hair and the sleeping girl cradled close, she looked almost angelic. Idly it struck Naruto that few would ever believe Raven Branwen capable of such tenderness if they didn't see it for themselves. He felt a sudden surge of affection, and yes, that nagging pang of attraction toward the woman before him. It must have shown on his face because Raven glanced up and for once seemed at a loss. A faint blush crept across her pale skin. What? She challenged, defensive though her voice was whisper quiet to avoid waking Vernal. Naruto shook his head, a genuine smile touching his lips. Nothing. Just thank you, Raven huffed, turning slightly to hide her face. Fool. I didn't do anything. For once her words lacked their usual bite. She lingered there as if unsure how to part. Naruto felt an odd impulse to reach out, perhaps to pull her into a proper hug or something more. For a heartbeat, the world around them stilled. Two comrades in arms, two old friends with too many secrets and too much unspoken between them, standing closer than they ever had before. Raven's eyes met his again, and the intensity there made Naruto's breath catch. But then Vernal murmured in her sleep, and the spell broke. Raven cleared her throat and took a decisive step back. In a fluid motion, she drew her sword and slashed it through the air behind her. Reality rent itself open in response. A swirling red portal yawned to life. Through that shimmering window came the distant shapes of trees and campfire embers. Raven's current hideout in the wilds, perhaps, or merely the place she'd spirited herself away to in the hopes of avoiding her team's prying eyes. I'll be around, Raven said almost gruffly, which from her was as good as any promise. Just keep in touch, and keep your head, Naruto. Her tone tried for nonchalance, but it couldn't mask the genuine concern lacing each word. We still have a deal, you and I, and besides... She squirmed in place for a moment, rubbing her thighs together. It looked like she wanted to say something. He let her struggle for a moment, not quite comprehending. When she finally spoke, her words were little more than an embarrassed whisper. I've been good, haven't I? Naruto blinked, eyes widening, inclined his head. He hadn't exactly forgotten per se, merely misplaced his thoughts for a moment. She kept the Spring Maiden's power hidden. He kept her secrets safe in turn, while she worked to raise Vernal and prove she could be a better person, a proper mother by her own words. Now it seemed he'd be working with her to ultimately bring Salem down on their terms, not Ozpin's. It was a tenuous pact, forged in trust and necessity. And, strangely, it had also forged a friendship he valued more than he ever expected. You have. He didn't miss the way her eyes lit up, nor the way she basked under his praise. You've taken good care of Vernal. I'm proud of you. Then, before he could do or say something that got them both in trouble, he changed the subject. I'll keep my head, he assured. No more monsters for a while. He managed a gentle smile that he hoped conveyed what he couldn't put into words right now. Good night, Raven. Just like that. She seemed to be waiting for something else, but what? Oh, Tilda! His brow furrowed in confusion, then narrowed in realization once he realized what she was getting at. Heat crept up the back of his back, but he didn't dare make a move on her yet. Raven looked at him for a long moment and made frustrated raven noises. Something like a reply glimmered in her eyes. Farewell, or take care, or perhaps something even more personal, but in the end, all she did was nod. Then, holding Vernal securely, she stepped backward into the portal. The crimson light swallowed them up. With a quiet whoosh, the rift snapped shut, leaving Naruto once again alone under the pale moon. He stood there a few seconds longer, exhaling a foggy breath into the chill air. The stars above were bright, oblivious to the turmoil of mortal lives below. Naruto rubbed at his face, suddenly exhausted, but lighter somehow. Raven's words replayed in his mind. You've got us. I won't let you lose yourself. He allowed himself a small, rueful chuckle. Who would have thought? The infamous Raven Branwen dragging him back from the brink. Perhaps the world really was changing. Perhaps people could change. Naruto tilted his head up to the sky, a steely resolve settling over him. Salem was out there plotting her next move, but he wouldn't face her alone. He had family by blood and by bond. He had friends and allies willing to knock sense into him when he strayed. And he had a promise to keep to all of them. To build a better world on this untraveled road fate had flung him onto. A small shimmer of scarlet suddenly opened before his face, catching him unawares. What? Raven absolutely thrust her head and shoulders through the small portal she'd created, followed by her arms, the hands of which caught him by the upturned collar of his jacket and subsequently used it to drag him into a searing kiss. Her mouth covered his, lips lingering, tongue plundering his for what felt like an eternity before she finally drew back to breathe. Making me leave without a reward, she grumbled under her breath, face burning red like roses. You really are a demon. Quick as can be, she vanished back into the portal from whence she'd came and closed it, leaving him alone. Naruto touched a hand to his lips and sighed heavily. Willow ain't gonna like this. A cool hand clamped down on his shoulder from behind and squeezed. Like what, dear Tilda? Kurama whimpered as he fled into the darkest corner of his mind. Naruto, against his better judgment, looked backward. Sure enough, an invisibility glyph shimmered and shattered nearby, revealing his fiancée in all her glory, clad in little more than a silver nightgown. If the cold chill of the evening bothered her, she didn't reveal it. Her eyes were locked onto him like heat-seeking dust missiles. He gulped, belatedly realizing he'd let his guard down and failed to sense her presence. How long have you been standing there? Though her smile was sweet, it didn't reach her eyes in the least. For the last 15 minutes. Don't worry, I'm not angry. Her grip on his shoulder tightened tenfold, despite those words, blue balefire of the winter maiden burning in her eyes. After all, it isn't as though some uppity bird hussy is trying to make moves on my darling. His aura flexed painfully beneath those 5 firm fingers, draining by the second. Or trying to steal him out from under me with another child. To be fair, he rallied, you know she adopted Vernal. But not that it was your idea, my heart. Whoa, her tone worried him. Semantics? Willow absolutely hissed. Naruto, darling. He gulped. Yes, love of my life. Please, stop talking. Her grip shifted to his wrist, followed by his hand, fingers interlocking with his. Then she dragged him inside, out of the cold, into the manor, and up the stairs. He was content to let her, if only because he knew that while he could break free of her grip, she would absolutely hound him through the manor. Better to just go along with it, do as she wished, whatever it was, and escape later. Assuming there was a later. He could see the anger blazing in Willow's eyes, and she didn't look to be letting go of his hand any time soon. As such, he dared to hazard a question against his better judgment. Where are we going, exactly? Bedroom, mister. You're giving me another daughter. Possibly 2. I want twins this time. Say what now? He paled in alarm. But we already have Willow rounded on him, her gaze swelling with azure flames. You are giving me another daughter, Naruto gulped. Yep, that settled it. Schnees were scary. Chapter 41. You know my game the day we met. Tilda, you really are a demon. Part 2. Morning sunlight streamed through the arched windows of the Schnee Manor's training room, painting golden rectangles across the polished wooden floor. A young winter Schnee stood in the center of the room, back straight, tiny chin lifted in concentration. She was presently dressed in an adorable approximation of a sparring outfit, pale blue training dress, white leggings, and little-heeled boots that clicked importantly on the wood. A white ribbon held back her fine, snowy hair so much like her mother's. Across from her, Tyrion Kalos crouched on all fours, tail an actual scorpion-like tail that curved from his lower back, twitching with anticipation. Ready, little snowflake? He trilled, a manic grin on his face. Today he'd tied a wide purple apron tied over his usual gear, emblazoned with the words, "Kiss the cook of all things," and was currently acting the part of monster at Winter's command. He waggled clawed fingers dramatically. "Rah! Here comes the big, scary, grim Tild." Winter giggled, not at all frightened by Tyrion's exaggerated performance. Nearby, Nicholas Schnee stifled a laugh behind his beard. The stately old gentleman sat in a velvet armchair that had been moved to the side for this private little training session, his cane propped nearby. To see the dignified founder of the Schnee Dust Company watching a faunus man in an apron prance and growl at his granddaughter was a sight few would believe. Yet Nicholas's eyes twinkled with delight. "Do be careful, Tyrion," he chided, though his smile showed he knew the scorpion faunus would never truly harm the child. "Winter's a fierce one. You might find yourself on the floor again." He'd been sure to take several pictures of that moment, for posterity's sake, of course. At that, Winter puffed up proudly. She raised the wooden spoon she was clutching her chosen weapon for this play battle and pointed it toward Tyrion. "I'm not afraid of you," she declared in her high, determined voice. "I'm a huntwess like Mummy and Summer and Kali." "Ha!" With a fearless charge, Winter rushed at Tyrion and swatted his forearm with the spoon. The faunus yelped far too dramatically and scuttled backward. "Mercy, mercy!" he cried, throwing an arm over his face. "I am defeated by the great Winter Schnee. Oh, the humanity, tilde." Winter paused, momentarily confused. The spoon had barely tapped Tyrion's arm. She was a strong little girl, but Tyrion was a muscular faunus hunter, obviously unharmed. She frowned, planting her hands on her hips. "You're pretending," she accused, realizing he was play-acting his defeat. Tyrion peeked at her with one lilac eye. "Ah, you got me," he chuckled. However, without warning, he lunged forward, scooping Winter up under the arms and lifting her high into the air. Winter shrieked, half in excitement, half indignation, as spun her around once before settling her onto his shoulders. "The beast strikes back. Now I've got you, little huntress." Winter squealed with laughter, drumming her heels against Tyrion's chest. "No, put me down." "Uncle Tyrion." Despite her protests, she was grinning ear to ear, tiny hands clinging to his head to steady herself. Across the room, Summer Rose leaned against the doorframe with her arms crossed, watching the spectacle with pure amusement, one hand lingering over her stomach. The famed leader of Team STRQ had a warm smile on her face that made her silver eyes sparkle. "He's surprisingly good with children," she said in a stage whisper. "Isn't he?" Beside her, Kaylee Belladonna nodded sagely, a teasing smirk playing on her lips. "Indeed. The dreaded Tyrion Callows, slayer of our enemies, now slayer of playtime." The dark-skinned cat faunus woman kept her voice low, mindful not to spoil Winter's fun as her feline ears twitched merrily atop her head. "Ah, there you are." Nicholas saw the two women and waved them over. Come in, ladies. We're having a morning celebration, it seems." He gestured at a silver tray on a side table which held a tea set and a plate of cookies half already devoured by Winter and Tyrion earlier. Summer and Kali joined him, each taking a seat in adjacent chairs. "I do love a good celebration," Kaylee remarked as she claimed her seat. "What's the occasion? Did our fearsome little huntress vanquish another imaginary beast?" Nicholas chuckled richly. "Even better. Watch closely now." He nodded towards Winter and Tyrion. Tyrion had just set Winter back down on the floor, kneeling to be at eye level with the girl. "All right, Snowflake," he said, giving her an encouraging grin. "Shall we show them what you did earlier? Think you can do it again for Grandpa and your aunties?" Winter bounced on her toes. So speaking, she scrunched her little face up in determination and held out a hand in front of her, palm upward. Everyone in the room fell quiet, watching. Summer leaned forward in curiosity, and Kali's ears perked up in mild expectation. Even Tyrion's usual restless energy stilled as he waited with bated breath. Nothing happened. Winter's brow furrowed harder, her cheeks puffing with effort. She looked so much like a miniature of her mother concentrating that Nicholas hid another smile behind his teacup. Then a pale blue light shimmered into existence just above Winter's small palm. It swirled and resolved into a tiny sigil, an icy blue snowflake glyph, translucent and wavery, but unmistakable. Summer gasped softly. "Already?" Kali actually dropped the cookie she was holding. "But she's so young." Tyrion whooped and clapped his hands once like an overexcited child himself. "There it is! There it is!" he crowed. "Her very first glyph." Winter giggled with delight, holding the glowing glyph aloft. It sputtered out after only a second, the effort proving too much to maintain. As it vanished, she wobbled on her feet. Tyrion immediately steadied her with a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Easy, little one. You did wonderfully." "Did you see?" Winter looked around the room eagerly, accidentally lisping in her excitement. "I did it! I made a glyph!" Nicholas was already out of his chair, moving with surprising swiftness for his age. He approached Winter, cane tapping the floor, and dropped to one knee with his arms wide. "You certainly did, my dear," he said, voice thick with pride. Winter launched herself into her grandfather's embrace. Nicholas lifted her and stood, cradling the tiny girl against his chest. His eyes were shiny with unshed tears. "Your very first glyph, at your age? Oh, your parents will be so proud." "I am so proud." He pressed a kiss to Winter's forehead, causing her to scrunch up her nose and giggle. Tyrion was practically vibrating with excitement. He bounced on the balls of his feet and then, unable to contain himself, did a little spontaneous jig purple apron, flapping. Summer clapped along laughing, and Kaylee covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking in mirth at the absurd yet heartwarming sight. Tyrion dear, do calm down or you'll wear a hole in the floor," she teased, eyes bright with amusement. "It's wonderful news, not the end of the world." Tyrion scoffed playfully, wiping an imaginary tear from the corner of his eye. "You don't understand, Madame Belladonna. I've been working with our fierce little snowflake for weeks on aura exercises. And today, it finally clicked." "Ha!" He spun once more and then struck a melodramatic pose, one hand over his heart. "Oh, such fulfillment. Why, I feel as though I might die of joy." Summer laughed openly. It was a melodious, gentle sound that filled the sunny room with even more warmth. "Winter's not the only one who's grown," she noted, shooting Tyrion an approving look. "You've come a long way yourself, Scorpion." Tyrion interjected, raising a finger as if scolding. "It's Uncle Tyrion, if you please." Summer's lips twitched. "Right, Uncle Tyrion." She shook her head in wonder. "Whatever would the world say, seeing this side of you?" Tyrion winked, mischief dancing in his lilac eyes. "Why, they'd say I make a killer nanny." She barked a bittersweet laugh at "Ha, and they call you a demon." "Why, Miss Rose? You're the very picture of decorum." "I wasn't talking about me poison for brains." That earned a chorus of groans and good-natured laughter from the adults. Winter, meanwhile, was too busy squirming in her grandfather's arms, reaching out for the cookie Carly had dropped. Kaylee dutifully retrieved a fresh one from the tray and offered it to the girl. Nicholas carried Winter over to the others. "I think this calls for a treat," he declared. "Winter, how about an extra piece of chocolate?" Winter's eyes went wide. She looked between the cookie in Callie's hand and her grandfather's face. 2 sweets? Today? This clearly violated some rule about dessert limits that Willow must have set. Nicholas chuckled, a deep, rich sound. "Just this once, Sprout. Special occasion." With a squeal of pure happiness, Winter accepted the cookie from Callie and also the chocolate Nicholas plucked from the tray for her. "Thank you, Grandpa." Her small arms could barely contain her prizes. Summer brushed a hand through Winter's snowy hair affectionately. "Good job, sweetie. You'll have to show your mommy and daddy later, all right?" Winter nodded vigorously, mouth already full of cookie. Crumbs dotted her chin, and Kaylee fussed over them all, wiping the detritus away with a silk handkerchief, cat ears twitching in delight. As the group dissolved into warm chatter, Nicholas praising Winter's potential, Tyrion excitedly recounting the exact moment the glyph first flashed. Summer stepped back quietly to take in the scene. These moments of peace had been hard-won, and she savoured them. A self-admitted cultist, better he worshipped Naruto and Willow than someone like Liam. Celebrating a child's growth like a doting uncle. A grandfather who once had only legacy and business on his mind, now reduced to happy tears by his granddaughter's triumph. Friends from different corners of Remnant gathered like family. Summer caught Kaylee's eye and saw her own sentiments reflected there. The Belladonna matriarch sidled over, folding her arms as she observed Tyrion now hoisting Winter onto his shoulders again at Nicholas's urging. "Victory lap!" Tyrion proclaimed as Winter waved her cookie like a victory flag. "They're adorable, aren't they?" Kaylee murmured, her tone equal parts amused and touched. "If I hadn't seen it for myself, I'd never believe it." Summer smiled, her expression soft. "It's amazing what a little hope and trust can do to people." Kaylee nodded. "And perhaps a guiding hand from a certain blonde ninja we know." She gave Summer a knowing wink. "And a bit of insanity." Summer elbowed her. "Shush!" The faunus took it with good grace. "What? He still calls Naruto his god, remember?" "Who knows? He might start calling you the same once he finds out about—" Her eyes drifted to Summer's seemingly flat stomach, seemingly being the operative word. There was a reason she wore her white cloak wherever she went these days. Summer hissed at her. You know nothing. Kaylee grinned like the cat that caught the canary. My lips are sealed. Summer suppressed a nervous laugh. It was true. Naruto's influence had knit together this unlikely family. Tyrion's exuberance, Nicholas's open affection, even Carly and herself often visiting Atlas to witness it, everything traced back to one catalyst. She glanced out the window, where somewhere in the distant city Naruto was likely still sleeping off the prior night's ordeals. Willow had dragged him out and they'd not been back since. He deserved to see this moment too, she thought. He'd be as proud as any of them. We'll have to reenact it for him, Summer said conspiratorially. When Naruto's awake. Tyrion, she called. Think you can manage an encore performance later? Tyrion shot her a salute so forceful it nearly dislodged Winter. Of course. Anything for our great golden god and his goddess Tilda. Aha! Carly crowed. See? I told you so. Nicholas chuckled, patting Tyrion's arm. In fact, why don't we all surprise him at lunch? Willow will be thrilled to hear about Winter's semblance too. At that, Winter gasped. Mommy! I want to show Mommy. She tugged Tyrion's hair, urgently making him yelp. And Daddy and Mommy Willow both. Summer shared a grin with Kaylee. They watched as the merry troop began to file out of the training room with Nicholas leading the way at Winter's insistence. Hurry, Grandpa! Tyrion prancing behind, making whooshing sound effects like a rocket ship as Winter rode on his shoulders, and Carly fussing that Winter's face still had chocolate smears. Their voices echoed down the hall, bright and joyful. Summer lingered a moment more, shaking her head in happy disbelief. A few years ago, none of them could have imagined this. Tyrion Callows, a treasured family friend, Winter Schnee, manifesting aura at such a young age, Nicholas still alive to witness it, and Summer herself here to smile about it. Fate's road truly had unexpected turns. With a last glance at the sunlit room where a tiny glyph had sparkled like a beacon of hope, Summer strode off to catch up with the others, laughter on her lips. And beneath her cloak, one hand lingered on her stomach. She really should say something. Now was as good a time as any. She wouldn't be able to keep this secret forever. Hell, if Kaylee already knew, then the others probably suspected. But it was such a lovely day today. Why ruin it with words that may or may not be true? What if she told them and something happened? What if she didn't make it to term? Maybe that made her a bit of a selfish bitch, a dastardly demon, some might. So be it. Summer was selfish. She wanted to cherish this year. Just a little bit longer, you know. Matilda. Evening settled over Vale with a pleasant breeze and a sky awash in purple dusk. In a cozy tavern on the city's outskirts, Crow Branwen clinked his mug against Taiyang Xiao Long's with a hearty clack. Amber ale sloshed over the rim of Tai's mug, splattering the already ale-stained table, but neither man paid it any mind. This was a long overdue drinking night between old friends, and a little mess came with the territory. To high-maintenance women, Crow toasted with a lopsided grin, finishing the earlier thought with a flourish. He tossed back a swig of his drink. Can't live with 'em, can't live without 'em. Taiyang chuckled and took a healthy gulp of his own ale. Amen to that. He leaned back in his chair, stretching his legs out. Though I never pictured you, of all people, settling down with anyone, Crow. Much less a lady who could probably knock you flat on your arse. Crow feigned an insulted gasp. Oi, I'll have you know I can still dodge a vase or two when Scarlet's in a mood. He smirked, twirling a finger around the rim of his mug. But yeah, I didn't see it coming either. A soft, genuine smile tugged at the corner of his mouth as he thought of Scarlet. She's got a hell of a hook, both with her right cross and with her cooking. Don't think I stood a chance. Taiyang raised his brows in mock amazement. The infamous Crow Branwen, felled by home-cooked meals and domestic bliss. The world truly has gone topsy-turvy. Crow snorted, flicking a peanut shell across the table at Tai. Laugh it up, Casanova. You're one to talk. How's dear Glinda? He waggled his brow at him. Given you any more detention slips for not doing your chores? Tai rolled his eyes, but he couldn't hide the broad grin that spread across his face at the mention of Glinda Goodwitch. She threatened to replacing my weights with pillows if I left them on the living room floor again. He chuckled, swirling the ale in his mug. The other day I actually found myself lining up my shoes by the door without thinking. She's training me like one of her first years. Crow broke into a rough laugh. Oh, that's rich. Poor Tai, housebroken by Professor Goodwitch. He raised his mug again. Here's to Glinda. May she keep you in line better than Summer or Raven ever could. Hey, hey! Tai waved his mug, slurring his words slightly. I could have had a chance with either one of them. Right, Crow rolled his eyes. Whatever you say, pal. I do say. Crow knocked his mug back and took a long drink. Buddy, Summer went for Uzumaki the second she saw that mecha arm of his and my sister wasn't far behind once she figured out her could knock her around. Or up, the blonde brawler groused. Hey, hey! Crow's mug flashed before his face, nearly braining him. They ain't like that yet. You know Vernal ain't hers by blood. That mess with the tribe wasn't her fault. Right. Whatever you say. Son of a bitch throwing my own words back at me. They clinked mugs again, though at the mention of Raven and Summer, the two men shared a brief reflective look. Summer was alive and well, and Raven was Raven, often off somewhere doing who knows what, though Crow had a nagging feeling his sister was more involved behind the scenes than she let on. Life had dealt them all some wild cards. Funny, isn't it? Tai spoke quieter now, idly tracing a finger through a ring of condensation on the table. You and me, sitting here gossiping about our love lives like two giddy kids. His tone was amused but touched with wonder. Honestly, I didn't think I'd get a shot at this. At being with someone. Crow looked down into the amber depths of his ale. He understood exactly what Tai meant. He'd never seemed the sort to settle down. And Crow himself, well, he'd always assumed his lot was to wander alone, a bad luck charm, better kept away from those he cared about. Yet here they were. Tai had found unexpected happiness with the strict but compassionate Glinda. And Crow had stumbled into the life of a certain bunny girl by sheer chance during that mad mess in Menagerie, and Scarlet had been stubborn or crazy enough to fall for him. Life's full of second chances, Crow murmured, then smirked. In our case, maybe third or fourth chances. He tipped back the rest of his drink and set the empty mug down. Not that it's all sunshine. Scarlet's wonderful, but damn if she isn't as headstrong as any Branwen. We get into it at least once a week. Tai chuckled. What do you even argue about? You're both so... He waggled a hand, searching for the word. Casual. She thinks I'm too reckless. I think she worries too much, Crow said, shrugging. Plus, she wants, well, kids? Tai finished for him. Crow clammed up, but the blonde bastard saw right through the act as always. We're not exactly kids ourselves anymore, Crow. Yeah, I get it. Branwen tutted and ran a hand through his hair. I'll think about it, all right? I'd be a bad influence on any kid. Did you say that to Scarlet? Maybe. Tai clapped a hand to his forehead. Oof, bet she loved that. Nearly took my head off with a frying pan, Crow confirmed with a fond chuckle. Still, we make it work. She yells, I duck, then we, kiss and make up. A roguish glint came into his eye. Despite all, Crow Branwen would never lose his devil-may-care charm. Maybe a little rabbit or two wouldn't be so bad. Tai groaned. All right. Spare me the details, Crow. I get enough of Glinda's. He coughed into a fist. Discipline at home. He wiggled his eyebrows suggestively and both men burst out laughing like teenagers. A few heads at the neighbouring tables turned, but seeing it was just two huntsmen having a grand time, nobody paid them any mind. Vale's taverns were used to rowdy patrons. When the laughter ebbed, Crow poured the last of the ale from the shared pitcher into their mugs. Speaking of home, how's things with you and the Miss Fussy Britches? He asked. Don't let her hear you say that or she'll toss a table at you. My question stands, Tilda. Tai smiled into his foam. It's good. Great, actually. You know, when Glinda first asked me out, I thought it was a prank. We'd known each other for years and never... But she apparently had an eye on me for a while. Oh ho. Crow leaned in. So the prim and proper Glinda Goodwitch had a crush on scruffy old Tai. That's adorable. Were there flowers? Did she blush? Tai shrugged, a faint flush rising on his cheeks. She said I made her laugh, and that I was refreshingly down-to-earth compared to all the uptight Beacon staff and Atlas specialists she's usually surrounded by. Poor James, Crow cackled. In other words, she liked that you were a lovable doofus. Basically. Tai took a swig. I won't lie, it's been an adjustment. She's, well, you know Glinda. Organised, immaculate, everything in its place. And I'm... He gestured vaguely at himself, well-built, but a bit scruffy. Shirt untucked, hair a blonde mess. The contrast needed no further explanation. Opposites attract, I guess, said Crow. So long as you're happy, that's what matters. He raised his mug one more time. To happiness, you blonde bastard. Tai clanked his mug against Crow's. To scarlet women and good witches, he quipped, eyes shining. They drank deep, and as Crow slammed his empty mug down, he let out a satisfied sigh. Warmth from the alcohol and the company spread through him. It's good to catch up like this, he said honestly. Feels like the world's been on fire lately. Nice to sit in one piece and just be. Taeyang nodded, resting his forearms on the table. Yeah, who knows what tomorrow is going to throw at us. But for tonight, I'm glad we have this. Crow drummed his fingers once on the wood. We should do it more often. Before our girlfriends start complaining we're underfoot too much. Tai snorted. Too late. Glinda's probably glaring at the clock right now because I promised her I'd help grade papers tonight. But here I am. Crow gave him a sly grin. She'll make you grade them twice as punishment. Better you than me, buddy. He slid off his stool, a little unsteady but far from truly drunk. Crow could hold his liquor like a champ, after all. Come on. One more round, then we head home. I'd rather not have Scarlet track me down with a shotgun for keeping her waiting. Or a pair of handcuffs. You take that back. Taeyang rose as well, fishing out some lean notes to leave as a tip. Deal. One more. As they headed for the bar counter together, Tai threw an arm over Crow's shoulders in a companionable half hug. For what it's worth, I'm happy for you, buddy. You deserve this. Crow pretended to gag at the sentimental statement, but he patted Tai's back appreciatively. Yeah, you too, you big sap. He glanced out the tavern's front window at the crescent moon hanging low over Vale's skyline. Here's hoping this piece sticks around. I kinda like it. Tai followed his gaze, his expression turning a touch more serious. Me too. We both know trouble's brewing out there, though. Crow's eyes hardened slightly. He hadn't forgotten. How could he? Raven's cryptic absence, Salem's dwindling but dangerous inner circle, and whatever fallout was coming from the incident in Mistral. When the time comes, we'll handle it, he said firmly. He nudged Tai with his elbow. Especially now that you're dating the future deputy headmistress of Beacon. Talk about an insider advantage. Tai laughed, lightening the mood once more. Hey, if Glinda ever found out I used her for intel, I'd be sleeping on the couch until summer. Worth it, Crow deadpanned. The two shared a grin and stepped up to order their final round, content in the moment and ready to face whatever storm lay ahead together. Tilda. Far to the north, in the shadowed halls of an obsidian tower, another meeting of sorts was taking place. The atmosphere here was a world apart from the light and laughter warming the Schnee estate or a Valian tavern. Here the air was cold and stale. What little light existed came from guttering black candles and the eerie bioluminescent glow of grim pools seeping through cracks in the stone floor. Salem sat upon her obsidian throne, porcelain features illuminated in flickers of sickly green light. Her expression was unreadable, an icy mask betraying nothing of the simmering frustration beneath. Before her, 4 figures stood in a loose semicircle, the last remnants of her once formidable inner circle. Leonardo Lionheart is gone, Salem pronounced, her voice carrying through the silence like a blade sliding over ice. There was no anger in her tone, no lament. If anything, it was laced with a faint disgust at the word Lionheart itself. One more pawn removed from the board. Doctor. Merlot adjusted his spectacles nervously at Salem's left. The portly scientist had seen better days. Deep shadows pocketed his eyes, and a nervous tick tugged at the corner of his mouth. Ah, an unfortunate setback, Your Majesty, he stammered. He clutched a datapad close to his chest. But perhaps an opportunity? With Lionheart absent, Haven Academy is leaderless and in chaos. We could install another pawn. We could nothing, Salem cut in sharply. Merlot flinched as if struck, but she didn't give him the chance to speak again. Do not mistake this moment for advantage, Doctor. Her eyes glowed faintly, the veins of darkness pulsing beneath her alabaster skin. Lionheart's treachery has galvanized the hunters. Ozpin will move quickly to secure Haven and repair the damage. And as for Uzumaki? She practically hissed the name, the first open display of emotion, true, genuine hate-cracking through her composure. He grows more troublesome by the day. I did not think her would outmaneuver us so quickly. Hazel Raynott shifted where he stood, arms folded. The giant of a man was as stoic as ever, but there was a subtle tension in how he clenched his jaw at the mention of Naruto. Hazel's reasons for hating Ozpin's cabal ran deep, his sister's demise chief among them, the silly fool. But even he could recognize that Naruto had upended the game board. Uzumaki has gathered many under his banner, he rumbled, deep voice echoing in on itself. Strengthened alliances between kingdoms, criminals turning coat to follow him. He shook his head, scowling. It's unprecedented. Unnatural, more like, came a bitter mutter from Salem's right. Miss Malachite stepped forward into the light, green eyes glinting. Her normally flawless makeup was slightly smudged, and a streak of someone's dried blood stained the hem of her clubbing dress. The former Mistral Underworld princess had been one of Salem's lesser agents, now promoted by virtue of being one of the only agents left. She tossed her teal hair over one shoulder. The man has an uncanny charisma, and he simply refuses to die like a good boy. Salem's gaze flickered at that. Indeed, piece by piece, her influence had been eroded. Cinder Fall, her Wood Maiden candidate, stolen away just as she'd set her sights on her. Arthur Watts, her genius. Someone she should have been able to lure to her side through promises of resources and recognition. Tyrion, who could have become her devoted hound, instead tamed and collared to what he believed to be a true god. Even the White Fang had resisted her influence thus far. Failures, each of them, one and all. Perhaps she should start anew. It was tempting to simply kill her current inner circle, wipe the board as it were, and begin again. So terribly tempting. Instead, she inhaled slowly, suppressing the swell of fury that threatened to boil over. Losing pieces was not new to her. Over centuries, she had seen countless agents come and go, but never had she lost so many potential pawns to a single opponent. Not even Osbin had never been able to turn her own against her so effectively. But this outsider, this nuisance from another world, he had done the impossible. Our circle may be small, Salem said at length, her voice soft but steel-edged, but we are not finished. She rose from her throne with a gliding grace. The four gathered underlings unconsciously straightened, their attention rapt on their mistress. In some ways, this situation is preferable. Merlot blinked in confusion. Hazel frowned. Malachite tilted her head. Only one among them showed no reaction, a small figure standing slightly behind Salem's throne. A little girl, perhaps 9 years of age, with straight black hair and a guarded expression. She was dressed in a simple black frock with white lace and outfit, oddly girlish for this bleak place. The girl's eyes, however, were anything but girlish. They were a cool, indifferent grey as she looked on silently. Salem extended a pale hand, almost affectionately toward the child. When one's pieces are limited, one must play more cleverly. She gently beckoned the girl forward. The child obeyed without a word, stepping up beside Salem. In the dim light, a faint symbol could be seen on the girl's neck. A curling insignia of some sort, perhaps an old Mistralian emblem. A mark from whatever past life she'd had before Salem found her. This is Alina, Salem introduced, resting her hand lightly on the girl's shoulder. The girl's face remained impassive, but she straightened her back with a hint of pride at being addressed. She will be the blade with which we strike back. Properly honed, of course. Merlot adjusted his glasses, squinting at the girl. This child? He began dubiously, then flinched as Salem's red eyes snapped to him. I mean, forgive me, my queen, but I'm not sure I understand. Hazel peered down at Alina, his massive arms still crossed. She has potential. It wasn't quite a question or agreement, more an observation. Hazel had an eye for strength, and though the girl looked small, he could sense a quiet, latent power coiled in her aura. But she's untrained. Leave that to me, Salem replied. Her sharp nails grazed Alina's cheek almost fondly. The girl didn't react, as if such gestures were normal. Young minds are ever so much easier to mould. Cinder was already half-broken and volatile. She would have been difficult to train. But Alina here? She will know only loyalty. Her voice dipped into a chilling warmth. Won't you, my dear? Alina lifted her chin. Yes, mother, she said, tone polite and flat, like a dutiful student reciting a lesson. There was a haunting emptiness to her eyes that no child should bear. Miss Malachite pursed her lips. That mark on her face? Is she from Mistral? Salem's smile was thin. Indeed, an orphan from our Little Haven incident. Her parents were radicals, disposable, but the girl. Salem's fingers curled slightly as if grasping an invisible key. She survived. With the proper encouragement, she has agreed to help me. Hazel's brow furrowed ever so slightly. You're sure she's the one to bear the maiden's might? At that, Salem laughed, a surprisingly musical sound that made Merlot shiver. Who better to embody the season's summer than a girl born on the very day of that season's solstice? She almost cooed the last word at Alina. She was meant for this. Merlot looked between Salem and the girl, realization dawning. The Summer Maiden, he breathed. You plan to strike at Vacuo, to have this child inherit the power of the present maiden. Salem did not answer directly. Instead, she moved past Alina, descending a few steps from her throne platform toward her gathered minions. The long obsidian skirts of her dress slid over the floor without a whisper. Naruto and Ozpin have rallied the kingdoms by peddling hope and unity, she said, each word measured. They think they've tipped the balance, but hope is a fragile thing. She began to pace slowly, and as she did, flickers of darkness pooled at her feet, shadows coalescing into small, creeping grim that skittered away into the corners. We will not confront them head-on, not yet. That was my mistake before. Salem's candor surprised the listeners. Admission of a mistake was rare from her lips. No, we will sow seeds of distrust, let fear work for us. And when they are at their most complacent, believing the threat is past, she paused and looked back at Alina, who met her gaze steadily. We will unleash our new maiden upon them and snatch back what is ours. Hazel grunted, determination in his eyes. Whatever you require, I will see it done. Of course he would. Hazel was a man of simple purpose. So long as Ozpin suffered, dumb, Dar Hazel would follow her commands. Merlot coughed lightly. My experiments with the Grim are at your disposal as well, of course. I have a few new prototypes that might bolster our forces discreetly. Malachite flicked open a compact mirror to check a smudge of lipstick, affecting a bored air. The streets still talk even in my absence, she drawled. I may be barred from Mistral, but I can slip into Vale's underbelly, see what worms I can turn or what information I can dig up. Perhaps even on that lovely Schnee family. She snapped the compact shut with a sharp smile. Everyone has skeletons. Maybe it's time some danced out of their closet at the worst moment. Salem inclined her head, pleased by the willingness, if not outright enthusiasm of her remaining subordinates. They knew, as she did, that direct confrontation had failed. Subterfuge and cunning would be their weapons now. Very good, she purred. Proceed carefully. We cannot afford any more blunders. Her eyes flashed as she emphasized the last word, and all three adult minions nodded solemnly. They understood the weight of that veiled warning. She would tolerate no further failure. Salem then turned to Alina and extended a hand. Come, child. It is time for your next lesson. Without hesitation, Alina took Salem's hand. The stark contrast, Salem's inhumanly pale, veined claw holding the small, tan-skinned hand of a child, was startling. Yet the girl showed no fear. Her influence was already absolute. Yes, mother. Such a good girl, her Alina. As Salem guided her latest pawn toward a side door that led deeper into the tower, where training chambers and grim classrooms lay hidden, she spoke once more to the others without looking back. The world believes me weakened. Let them. Her voice echoed, growing fainter as she departed with the child. In their overconfidence, they will expose their throats. And when they do, we shall be the fangs that bite. The heavy door creaked shut behind Salem and the girl, plunging the grand hall into near darkness once more. Hazel, Merlot, and Melanie exchanged glances. There was much to do, and though none dared say it aloud, each one of them felt a cold prick of something in their hearts, whether it was fear, resolve, or regret. The die was cast. Salem's war against hope would continue on a new front, in new ways. Uzumaki may have won several battles now, but the war had just begun. Tilda. Cinder Schnee flopped into bed, clasped both hands behind her head, and stared up at the ceiling of her bedroom, wearing the biggest smile. Sienna and Roman could doze off with Neo, but her, she had plots to plan, future greatness to achieve. She couldn't wait to see what her future had in store. Life was good. Tilda. Far above, through a narrow slit of a window, the moon hung low and distant. Half shattered, half whole, a silent witness to the world's turning. Naruto stood on one of the many balconies of the Schnee Manor, leaning forward on the railing as the last of dusk faded into night. The evening air was brisk but not uncomfortably so, and he took a deep breath of it. The evening air was brisk but not uncomfortably so, and he took a deep breath of it. After the intensity of the past days, the mundane sight of traffic moving on city roads and the faint sound of an airship humming in the distance felt oddly grounding. He heard soft footsteps approaching and smiled without turning. Couldn't sleep either, huh? Willow Schnee's voice answered, gentle and teasing. It seems insomnia is contagious tonight. She joined him at the railing, a thick shawl wrapped around her against the chill. In the faint light spilling from the manor windows, her regal features were cast in a warm glow. She studied his face and he saw the concern lingering there. "You've had a lot on your mind. Care to share?" Naruto opened his mouth to deflect, to say he was fine, but this was Willow, the woman who had saved him from bleeding out in her garden so many moons ago. The woman who had given him a home, a family, love. She deserved the truth as much as he could give. "Just thinking about what comes next," he said quietly. "What we all have to do. It's a long road ahead." Willow reached over and took his hand in hers. Her fingers were cool but steady. "You don't have to walk it alone," she reminded him softly, echoing Raven's sentiment from earlier without even knowing it. Naruto felt a swell of gratitude. He brought Willow's hand to his lips and pressed a light kiss to her knuckles. "I know," he replied. "And I'm grateful." He gazed out over Atlas again. "Really, I am." Willow's eyes searched his, discerning and patient. "I'm sensing a but." "But," Naruto huffed a small laugh. "There are things I need to tell you." He looked down at their intertwined hands. "About what I did to Lionheart." Willow inhaled a slight catch of breath. She had heard rumors, of course, and seen the haunted look in his eyes when she nearly asked him directly. But she hadn't pressed him then, sensing he wasn't ready. Now he was volunteering it, which meant he was coming to terms with it in his own way. "You can tell me whenever you wish." Naruto considered the question. The turmoil was still there inside him, the guilt for crossing lines he never thought he would, the steel-hard resolve that it was necessary, and the worry of what those actions meant for him going forward. But voicing it first to Raven and now alluding to it with Willow, that had stripped the deed of its choking power over him. "I feel clearer in the head," he answered slowly. "Not exactly better, but clearer on why I did it, and that's what I need to be careful of." Willow nodded, stepping closer to him. The shawl around her shoulders brushed his arm. He could feel her warmth. "Just don't lose yourself, Naruto. That's all any of us fear." She gave him a faint, wry smile. "We can handle anything except losing the man who brought us together." Naruto couldn't help a soft smile in return. "When did you become so poetic?" "I spend my nights sharing a bed with a secret ninja-turned-family man." "It rubs off," Willow said with a light laugh. Then she sighed, a content, knowing sound, and rested her head against Naruto's shoulder. Together they looked out into the night. "Winter was absolutely beaming at dinner tonight," she mused after a moment. "I've never seen her so proud of herself. Summoning that little glyph has her thinking she'll be ready to enroll at Beacon already." Naruto chuckled. "At this rate, maybe she will. Tyrion's already planning her huntsman debut." "Oh, gods, don't encourage him," Willow groaned, though she was smiling. "I caught him trying to read her The Art of War as a bedtime story. She's still so young." Naruto snickered. "Tyrion's certainly enthusiastic, but he means well." They fell quiet again, comfortable in each other's presence. Down below, a flurry of snow began to drift from the clouds, the first snow of Atlas's winter. The flakes twirled lazily in the air, catching in Naruto's blonde hair and speckling Willow's lashes. "It's beautiful," Willow whispered, gazing up at the dark sky as white began to fall around them. "I always loved the first snow." Naruto tightened his arm around her waist. "It is." He wasn't looking at the snow. He was watching her, the way her eyes lit up with childlike delight and the way the tiny snowflakes vanished on her warm cheeks. Amidst all the chaos and uncertainty, moments like this, intimate, gentle, achingly human, were what he fought for. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Salem was still out there, adapting to her losses in ways they could only guess. Ozpin had secrets yet to be unraveled. The next generation of heroes, children like Cinder, Winter and Vernal, or countless others, would face battles of their own someday. They were safe and sound in their beds for now, but those battles would surely come. But tonight, here on this balcony, he allowed himself to simply exist in the peace they had earned for now. Raven's parting words drifted back to him, "Don't lose yourself." He closed his eyes and leaned his forehead against Willow's. In the distant reaches of his mind, he felt Kurama's quiet presence. A reassuring weight, awake but silent, approving of the serenity of this moment. "I won't," he promised silently to Raven, to Willow, to himself. "I won't lose myself. I'll protect all of you, no matter what." Willow tilted her head curiously. Even with his eyes closed, he felt her brush a lock of damp hair from his forehead. "What are you thinking about?" Naruto opened his eyes. He smiled, a genuine, bright smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes and banished, at least for now, the shadows that had dwelt there. "Just how lucky I am," he said, voice earnest. "Ought to have all of you." Willow's face softened with quiet ardour, her bright blue eyes flashing with a flare of the Winter Maiden's might. Slowly, almost tenderly, she lifted a hand to cup his cheek, then drew him in for a kiss. "We're the lucky ones, my darling." Whatever came next, they would face it as they did all things, together.